Commissioners meeting to order. Our first order of business is to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good morning, everybody. We have you've received the agenda in your packet, and the first order of business is to approve the agenda, the consent agenda as it is, or consider taking items off the consent agenda for consideration. Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like us to pull items E, F, G, and H, the four proclamations in the consent agenda.
Okay. Is there anything else we'd like to remove from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, if I may just comment, I did have about one of the items, just a quick comment.
Okay.
Would I have to pull it, or?
Probably best.
Okay, then I'd like to pull the Greater Minnesota Family Services contract.
Letter I.
Letter I.
Very good. Anything else? All right, hearing none, I would consider or entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as amended.
Also move.
Commissioner Gardner moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any discussion?
Maybe just list the items that we are.
Oh, yes, I'm
approving under
sorry.
the consent
I
agenda.
will do that in just a minute, because otherwise I'll forget to vote on it. All in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So what remained on the consent agenda that we just approved was approval of the April 18th board minutes, the auditor's warrants and claims, the 2023 Glacier Lake Snowmobile Grant Application, which is an annual renewal, and the Resolution 2318 authorizing the signature on behalf of Kennewick County for the auditor. All right, then, let's see, did I get them all? I did get them all. So now we'll move on to general discussions. And first up will be Constance Nelson talking about children's mental health and foster care. Welcome. For the record, state your name and your position.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Constance Nelson, Children's Services Supervisor for Health and Human Services. You heard from Kathy Nelson last month more specifically about child protection. My team works in support of and adjacent to child protection staff. I supervise children's mental health case managers, family, child care, and child foster care licensing, as well as the case aides that provide general support for our Children's Services Department. May is a big month for my team, and I'll touch a little bit on each of these three programs, children's mental health, child care, and foster care, as well as read the proclamations regarding all three. Starting with licensing, both child foster care and family child care licensing is a state program delegated by the Commissioner of Human Services to counties. The Minnesota Department of Human Services maintains a role in licensing, especially if there are complaints, investigations, health and safety concerns, and other atypical situations. For this purpose, there are triage teams at DHS that our licensors can consult with, and we do take advantage of that on a regular basis. County licensors collect or coordinate all the information to complete the licensing process, including background checks, health and safety checks of the homes, training, and plenty of statute-required paperwork. Ultimately, counties make the licensing recommendation, but DHS has the final say. I will start a little bit with Foster Care Month, first being the proclamation for National Foster Care Month in the month of May. Whereas the family serving as the primary source of love, identity, self-esteem, and support is the very foundation of our communities and our state. And in Kandiyohi County, there are currently 92 children and youth in foster care being provided with a safe, secure, and stable home, along with the compassion and nurture of a foster family. And Candy Ojai County has many dedicated traditional and relative foster families who give generously of themselves to provide nurturing, safety, guidance, hope, and love for children and families in need. And foster, kinship, and adoptive families who open their homes and hearts to support children whose families are in crisis, play a vital role in helping children and families heal and reconnect, thereby launching young people into successful adulthood. And there are numerous individuals, public and private organizations who work to increase public awareness of the needs of children in and leaving foster care, as well as the enduring and valuable contribution of foster parents. Therefore, the Candy Ojai County Board does hereby proclaim May 2023 as Foster Care Month in Candy Ojai County and urges all citizens to volunteer their talents and energies on behalf of children in foster care, foster parents, and the child welfare professional staff working with them during this month and throughout the year.
Thank you very much. And is there any comments or follow-up from any of the board members? I would just make the note that I think a lot of us think of foster care as somebody who, sets up their home to accept these children, but a core of the foster care that is often not top of mind is family foster care. And I'm talking about aunts and uncles and grandparents that take on the role of going back into rearing children in the case of their own kin. So
Absolutely.
got to remember those folks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can touch on a few trends regarding foster care. The number of out-of-home placements continues to be staggering. However, in 2022, we had fewer children enter placement than in the last 3 years. This sounds like great news, and it is, but we have to remember that youth placement dates don't align with the calendar year. So while 80 to 90 new children entered placement, our Child Services Department still case managed for 209 kids in out-of-home care. So far in 2023, we've had an additional dozen or so children enter care, and over 120 children remain in out-of-home care. Candy Ojai County continues to exceed the state standard of placement of children with relatives. While the state performance standard requires 35.7% or greater, Candy Ojai County remains above 60% and has for about the last 5 years. And this is now where the state averages as well. Our county has 45 fully licensed homes, 38 of which are licensed by Candy Ojai County, and about half of those are relative homes. And like you mentioned, our relatives rarely come to the agency asking to get licensed. They have had their grandchildren or nieces and nephews placed in their care first, and then become tasked with having to complete child foster care licensing as required by statute. On top of caring for children, completing background studies, paperwork, home visits, training, and more, all foster parents have to get kids to usually 3 or so court-ordered supervised visits per parent per week. Doctor's appointments, drug protocol screenings, OT, PT, speech, IEP meetings at school, and more. They have to become healers of trauma and managers of huge emotions, all while managing various systemic requirements. This is no easy feat, and to offer a small token of our appreciation to our foster families, our agency is honoring each by bringing them a meal and gift basket later this month.
Ms. Nelson, could I interrupt you for just a second? I
Absolutely.
think you're about to go on to a proclamation, another proclamation, or maybe
Yeah,
we did not vote on the last proclamation.
Okay.
So I'm going to back up just a step and ask for a motion on the proclamation for National Foster Care Month.
I so move.
Commissioner Berg moves on the proclamation. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Sorry for the interruption.
not at all. I am going to move on to childcare then. Childcare Provider Appreciation Day is May 12th of 2023, and the proclamation is: Whereas our future depends on the quality of the early childhood experiences provided to young children today, and high-quality early childhood services represent a valuable commitment to our children's future. In Candido County, child care providers are serving children so family members may accept or maintain employment. The contribution of child care providers to our children's future is worthy of the highest respect, and by calling attention to the importance of high-quality child care services for all children and families in Candido County, we hope to improve the availability of such services, and Candido County encourages parents to take May 12th, 2023 to show their child care providers how much they appreciate them. Now, therefore, the Candido County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim May 12th, 2023 as Child Care Appreciation Day, and urge all citizens to join in acknowledging Candido County's child care providers for the invaluable contributions made to the children and families of Candido County.
Thank you for that. We will also need a motion to accept that proclamation.
Mr. Chair, I will so offer that motion.
Commissioner Gardner moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any comments or questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just want to piggyback on this a little bit in that we have a great need across Candido County and across the entire state of Minnesota for more childcare slots. And this is an economic development issue as well as a family and child development issue. To that end, the EDC and the MMDC have been working with others to, and they've used some of our ARPA funding to be able to offer grants to existing and prospective child care providers. And I would imagine you might be touching on that briefly.
I will, absolutely.
Okay, and those grant applications are open now. If there are any questions, I think you can go to the EDC website. I think, is it on our website as well? I don't know that yet.
I don't believe so.
But at any rate, if anyone's thinking about getting into it, either on a home-based or a center-based program, that'd be an awesome place for them to start. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? I think the board has probably heard me say this before, but so those folks that are taking care of foster children are often taking care of children that have been in tough spots. They probably have some adverse childhood experiences or ACEs. They've probably had, contact with child protection. And Minnesota Supreme Court Justice Ann McKeague gave a statement here a while back to a group of Association of Minnesota Counties people that I think I have the right number, is like 83% of all people that are involved with law enforcement had their first contact in child protection. So it's a startling number how people that have had interaction in the child protection area end up being involved with law enforcement later on in their life at some time. So her point was we have a great opportunity to improve those numbers.
Absolutely. And continuing to commit ourselves to becoming trauma-informed practitioners in the county as well.
Thank you.
A couple notes about childcare providers. Like Commissioner Gardner mentioned, we are short slots, but our numbers have maintained around 84 providers from last year to this year. We've had a couple retirements, a couple closures, but also a couple new providers that have become licensed to compensate, and it's more or less a wash. To support and grow the number of childcare slots across the county, there are a number of boots on the ground working with the Rural Child Care Innovation Commission to distribute over 100,000 grant dollars through a multifaceted approach. The money will go towards forgivable loans, mentorship, an employee assistance program in conjunction with Woodland Centers, transportation, training, technology, and language support. The grant applications are open. I think they opened in the last week or two, and they can be found on the Candy-Ojai County and City of Willmar Economic Development Commission website, but not our own. In an effort to recruit additional family childcare providers, we'll co-host with the EDC a recruitment event on June 7th at Robbins Island. There we will have members of the RCCIP to discuss how to access the grant. Existing providers can share their experience. Individuals from supportive programs such as Child Care Aware and UCAP's Wayfinder program, and of course, our licensor and myself will be there as well, hopefully to engage many people interested in becoming child care providers. Additionally, on a weekly basis, our agency reviews and approves age and capacity variances on a case-by-case basis according to guidance from DHS and a policy adopted by the board in 2020. Variance really is a means to allow a provider to temporarily step outside of what statute and rule require in that license program, offering them an ability to come into compliance at the end of the variance or terminate their needs for that variance. Factors we consider when we receive variance requests from providers might include, but are not limited to, the length of time the provider has been licensed, whether that provider has had any health or safety concerns in the recent past, whether adding more children would include accommodating siblings that are already in the home of that provider, the length of time of the variance, and how many caregivers relative to the number of children. Candy-Ojai County does its best to accommodate as many capacity variances as possible, obviously weighing risk and safety in each. Most of our requests are to accommodate infants and toddlers, oftentimes infants joining their siblings. We have processed about 115 variance requests since the beginning of 2022. If we have questions on whether we can actually approve a variance, we are having conversations with providers to see if we can seek clarification, do some creative problem solving in order to accommodate the provider's needs. All in all, we've been able to approve all but 4 of those 115 variance requests. We are also hopeful that the massive efforts already underway at DHS will simplify the licensing system. The process in general should also help hopefully increase some future providers to add to our area. I will move on then to,
Yeah, just a comment. I think
Yeah.
you, Mr. Chairman, may I think you maybe answered my comment last time we had a presentation, and as we all know, it's probably the most highly rules and regulated type of program that we have in human services or family services. And there's always been talk about lessening those rules for the providers because it's so complicated to get into. But you talked to me, you just talked to us about all the variances. Is it getting any less, or the variances give you more options?
I think the variances continue to roll in, and usually it's providers seeking to add 1 infant, 3 toddlers, 8 preschoolers, and several child school-age kiddos. And of course, depending on where the provider is, we have to make sure that they're not exceeding the number of kids that they can care for legally. And so that is absolutely continuing, increasing. I think it's been pretty stable since I've been a part of this program. But we are also really hearing from DHS that we can't be accommodating the lack of childcare slots by letting
Sure.
the rules slide. And so we have to really weigh that with every variance request.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just to follow up on that, you alluded to some potential changes at DHS that are going to, what types of changes? Are they going to allow for more flexibility? Are they going to help people actually get into this and make it a viable business type of thing, whether it's home-based or center-based?
I think the changes that we can anticipate will simplify the licensing process. We will still have our background checks and training and paperwork requirements, but the simplification comes somewhat based off of assumption and bits of information DHS is sharing that we will be going to an electronic licensing management system, hopefully easing some of the mess of paperwork that providers and the licensor have to deal with. So providers will be able to submit their documentation right through a portal that comes right to us that we can access from our computers. That grant transportation and technology piece can help offset some of the technology requirements providers will be looking at here in the future as well. We'll be looking at kind of a tiered system as far as the level of safety needs, especially if there are violations regarding those health and safety needs. So I'm assuming the lower tier needs will have lesser compliance correction types of orders, and the higher needs, of course, could result in licensing actions such as conditional licenses, revocation, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, you may proceed.
All right, I'm going to hop over to Children's Mental Health now. The proclamation for Children's Mental Health Awareness Day is May 11th, 2023. Whereas addressing the complex mental health needs of children, youth, and families today is fundamental to the future of Candy Ojai County, the need for comprehensive, coordinated mental health services for children, youth, young adults, and families places upon our community a critical responsibility. It is appropriate that a day should be set apart each year for the direction of our thoughts toward our children's mental health and well-being. Pact for Families Collaborative, through its unique approach to serving children, youth, and young adults in mental health or substance use disorders, is effectively caring for the mental health needs of children, youth, young adults, and their families in our community. Now, therefore, the Candy Ojai County Board does hereby proclaim May 11th, 2023 to be Candy Ojai County Children's Mental Health Awareness Day, and urge our citizens and all agencies and organizations interested in meeting every child's mental health needs to unite on that day in the observation of such as will acquaint the people of Candy Ojai County with the fundamental necessity of year-round program for children, youth, and young adults with mental health or substance use disorders and their families.
Thank you. I think there's probably not a person in this room that isn't affected by family mental health issues, whether it's with the children or the elderly or the middle-aged. And so I think this is appropriate. I would entertain a motion to accept the proclamation.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the proclamation.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves on the mental health proclamation. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner
Mr. Chair.
Berg seconds. Any other discussion? Thank you very much. Oh, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Nelson. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Corinne, you're going to talk about adult mental health.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I will start with a proclamation that really is looking at Mental Health Month and not just narrowed to the children's that Constance had done. And so, whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas all people experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions, and whereas there is strong research that companionship, humor, spirituality, religion, recreation, social connections, and work-life balance can help people protect their health and well-being, and whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in our nation, and whereas with effective treatment, those individuals with mental health and other chronic health conditions can recover and lead full and productive lives, and whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizens share the burden of mental health problems and has a responsibility to promote mental wellness and support prevention efforts. Now, therefore, the Candioi County Board does hereby proclaim May 2023 as Mental Health Month in Candioi County. As a Board of Commissioners, we call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in Candioi County to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps our citizens can take to protect their mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people within the mental health conditions.
We've heard the proclamation for Mental Health Month. Do I hear a motion to endorse this proclamation?
I will make that motion.
Commissioner Gardner moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any discussion or comments? Again, it's great to have that awareness, and hopefully the longer, warmer days will help everybody. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You
All
have more?
right, and then I was
You have a
just going to
report.
do, I know time is limited, so feel free to cut me off when you need to. And I just wanted to do kind of an overview of our adult mental health and if we have time, adult protection as well. And I think as a proclamation talks about it, really the Mental Health Month is to really call that awareness to all of us to be able to ask the question, how is our mental health doing? And if it's not doing okay, what are we doing about that? And so it's okay to be able to acknowledge that we're not okay, and that ability to ask for help. And I think it's important for people to realize that range of help can be going out for coffee with a friend to needing a hospital level of care and everything in between. And because I think sometimes when people think mental health, it's like has to be a big major thing, and the world's falling apart and those sort of things. And that is happening for some people. But also mental health is everyday sort of challenges. And as the proclamation talks about, it doesn't have to be on major issues. It doesn't have to be major fixes. It can be something as simple as going out for coffee with a friend to be able to address the mental health. And if we can promote those things and be able to push those things, hopefully we'll stay away from some of the higher level needs of services that have to happen for our other people who are at that level. So I just want to take a couple minutes to talk a little bit about our adult mental health case management services. And what happens, for just a quick overview, is a person needs to have what we call a diagnostic assessment or a comprehensive assessment to be able to get to that diagnosis, if you will, of serious and persistent mental illness. If a person has that level of diagnosis, then they're able to request case management services from us. And those case management services are voluntary services, and what they're about is that ability for our case managers to work with people to really assess what are your needs, what's the functional things that are going on for yourself. That may be what your mental health level is, what your medication needs may be. Maybe it's housing, employment, family relationships, and we really help that person to assess what's going on for you and with those needs. And then we're taking those needs and we're working with them to create a case plan. And that case plan is about setting goals. What are things that you, as a person in need of services, what are those goals that you want to work on? And that may be something as simple as, I really want to work on getting to all my appointments, to something I really need residential level of care. And anything in between in that. But these are voluntary services, and we start where clients are at, and we develop those goals based on what that client is identifying as what they want to work on. And then what our case managers do is we develop that plan with the clients, and then we look to make service referrals or link them with services that may be most effective to help them accomplish what those goals are. And then we do that monitoring, and we continue to coordinate that. and we continue to meet with them on a regular basis to be able to see where are you at with your plan? How are you accomplishing your goals? What other resources, what other challenges are you having, and how can we continue to, on an ongoing basis, be able to address those? In 2021, we had 209 people received our adult mental health case management services, and in 2022 was 204. So we really have maintained that level of services that we're providing to people who are requesting our voluntary services. The other piece of our level of work that our adult mental health workers do is the civil commitment piece. And so the civil commitment piece, of course, are not the voluntary service piece of it. The civil commitment piece starts with what we call a pre-petition screening. And that pre-petition screening may be brought about from a doctor, a mental health professional who is making a statement in support of commitment. Or it may be what we call an interested party who is presenting us with information and asking us to complete a pre-petition screening. Or it may come from what we call a Rule 20, which is through the criminal process. And so there's a variety of ways that pre-petition requests can come to us. What we do is once we take that screening, we are really looking at what are the current situation that's going on for that person, and does that level of risk, whether that risk to themselves or risk to others, is that meeting that statutory requirement for commitment. And then if it meets that level, we screen that out, and then we make that referral to the county attorney's office, then who makes the decision to see if that petition is getting filed with the court. And then it creates a court process that we're involved in with the client as well. We really have maintained numbers also in our pre-petition screening request. We had 62 in 2021 and 59 in 2022. And so we've really maintained on those level of requests, the amount of requests. As some of you have already heard on updates through the years, you know that the mental health system in Minnesota has lots and lots of challenges. And I wish I could stand here and say, it's been fixed, but it's not. We continue to have lots and lots of challenges in the mental health area. And one of the ones that I really wanted to kind of gear in on today is to be able to talk about staffing shortages and how that really has added another layer of challenge for our providers, and then in that process for our consumers, and then also obviously for our staff. We're really seeing that staffing struggle at every level of service, whether that's community services from our mental health centers, whether that's wait times for therapy, psychiatry, and also then lack of employees at residential level of care, and that is preventing bed capacity, that's preventing providers being able to take new clients in, those sort of things. And so it's really putting another layer of challenges on our providers as well as our case managers. And I can give you an example of a situation that we're in right now in which we have a person who is committed to a state behavioral health hospital. And what happens at a behavioral health hospital is that once they're able to work through the treatment that they need to work through, then they become what they don't meet criteria for hospital level of care. And then what happens, obviously, is the case manager works with the state facility to make what's the next plan, what's that next step down that person needs. What happens is that we're finding, and we are struggling in this situation, that we don't have the availability of that step down. And once the hospital says they don't meet criteria, the county is responsible for paying 100% on that level of care at the hospital. So right now we're in a situation of paying $1,680 a day for the consumer to remain in that care. And that's not from lack of trying, from the state working with our case manager and our case manager making multiple, at last count, I think we have 20 no's from providers about their ability to take this client. And some of that we're hearing more and more is about staff shortage. And that they're not able to take those higher level acuity clients because of the lack of staff to support that within their agency. So I think it's important for you to know that we're in those sort of situations, and there's a cost to that directly to the county. And though our case manager is diligently working to make a change in that, it's not happening the way we would like that to happen. And ourselves, even in our mental health area, we are staff shortage. Starting this week, we will be fully staffed. We haven't been fully staffed since the first week of September. And so we've gone a long stretch of not having full staff, which obviously then creates stress and more workload on the employees that are still here. I really would like to kind of call out a shout out for Megan Knott and Amanda Olson, who are very consistent veteran adult mental health case managers who really have gotten us through these last months of staff shortage, where they've taken on increased commitment work. They've really helped to triage our intake. How are we going to meet the needs of these clients, helping triage that level of risk for people who are requesting services, and they really have gone above and beyond. Like I say, this week we have a new staff person who is coming into our adult mental health area, so that will bring us back up to full staff. The catch of that, of course, is that person is coming from child protection. And so we're just switching where that staff shortage is. But I'm happy. Anyways, as we look at those challenges, there continues to be those challenges, and that staff shortage is truly been identified as the kind of new big challenge in the last year or so. And of course, that has that ripple effect. If we're not able to have providers who able to provide the services, you're going to see more people in our jails with the mental health struggles. We're going to see more people at costly placements. And so it's just that ripple effect that happens when we're not able to have the level of service that we truly need really across the state of Minnesota for all mental health levels. Questions on the mental health?
Questions for Dwayne?
Yeah, so I have a question. Is this available, like if somebody needs help, is it available for all income levels, or is there a cutoff for a certain income, or?
No, our services, you have to have that serious and persistently mentally ill on that level of need for us to be able to provide the adult mental health. But it's not based on income at all.
So
Doesn't matter what your.
How do they get that diagnosis? Do they go to their doctor?
They have to have what we call a diagnostic assessment or a comprehensive assessment, and then that's a level of definition that the mental health professional gives them.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Berg?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Yes, just like to comment and ask you for some questions as well. I just want to clarify, too, for everybody's information, that the Candioi County Board is the mental health authority for the county, according to the state. And we have this responsibilities, we have to do these things. And this is why we provide these case management services, and woodland services, and we, by law, have to do these. A very important thing, and I'm glad we are doing those, but it gets very expensive for our budget. And I'm looking at your comments about the cost for these individuals that are in the hospital, and we can't find places for them. And I know you try really hard to do that, but that's a real budget breaker, these people that end up in the hospital, and there's no resources for them to leave. So it's almost $1,700 a day. In a month, that's $50,000 just like that, and it doesn't take long for a month to go by.
Right, and this current one that I use an example of already has been at a does not meet level of care for 30 days. And so we're already in that amount of time.
Yep.
I know of, and this has been a number of years, though, a similar situation, and it was $350,000 for that cost of care until we were able to find an appropriate placement for that person. I don't think we're going to get to that for this client. We're hopefully going to be able to find an appropriate, but sometimes what happens in these situations, you want to find what the best case plan is. You want to find the best placement. You want to find the best next step for that person. And I'm afraid that we get to the point, it's like, okay, where can we find a bed? And how can we make that work? And sometimes that may not be in the ideal of what's best for that person, which then just adds another layer of challenges that could potentially come down, or it's not a successful placement then, and then we're starting all over with maybe revocations for commitments and those sort of things. And so it becomes this ripple effect, like I say, that can create some real problems.
And may I follow up, Mr. Chair? Thank you. And these are basically levy dollars, I believe, correct?
Yes, levy dollars for the hospital, when
Yeah.
we're paying for the hospital level of care.
One person can expect their levy 1 or 2%.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just referring to the proclamation and the fact that it states that mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being and so forth. There are so many people out there that struggle with mental health, whether it be depression, chemical dependency, any number of those things, and no one is immune. I know that several of us here have heard over the years from one of our former commissioners their story about mental health struggles, and I would lend my voice and experience to that as well. Over half a lifetime ago, as a younger man, I struggled with depression, and through therapeutic means and other, including relationships with a lot of folks who helped me out over the years, I was able to work through that. When I stopped at the gas station this morning, the person who was helping me brought up a recent incident that of someone who may have taken their own life, and they said, "What do we do?" And the question for all of us is, what do we do? What can we do? And I think we need several things. One is just show that you care, be present, be kind. If there's anything that we could do as citizens, is just be kind and be willing to put yourself out there as a resource for whether it's a friend or a loved one or somebody you don't even know. And that would be my wish for us today, is to help people, especially post-COVID, through whatever struggles that they're going through.
You know, I think one of the things with the mental health is that there isn't, if you have a broken leg, people see you have a broken leg, and they ask how you are and what can I do. And if you have a person who has cancer, and everybody rallies and make meals for that family. And you don't see that in mental health because it doesn't necessarily have a face. And so it really is doing exactly what you're saying, is that ability to ask the question, how are you doing today? Listen to people, to be kind, because you really don't know what the struggle is that the person across from you might be dealing with. And you don't see the broken leg. You see the broken leg, but you don't see maybe that depression or that anxiety or that mental health, whatever that mental health struggle may be. And so it's so critical that we really do, not only in the month of May, but throughout the year, really be able to check in with people, ask the question, how are you? But then also as people to be able to say, God, I had a crappy day, and be able to, or a crappy week or a crappy month, or I don't know how to get on top of this, or Or for a person to say, I've got voices going on in my head, and I don't know what that's about, and I need help with that. Because like I say, mental health is from one extreme to the other, and we just really need to be able to be okay with talking about it.
One more.
Okay,
Mr.
yes,
Bricklow.
yes. Well, quite a lengthy conversation here. I think we can probably make this a whole meeting. Good point. But yeah, I just want to pile on even more that's important to ask, how people are doing. And not only that, but don't be scared to ask more if you think there's a need to, Have you ever thought about hurting yourself? Because if they haven't, they certainly will tell you, no, I'm not feeling that bad or whatever. I'm not at that point. And if they are, I think it's important that they tell you that. And sometimes we're scared of asking that question, but they say, yeah, I've thought about that. And you'll be surprised how many people probably have. And then you have to find out what they're going to do about that and where they're at. So don't be scared to ask questions and connect the dots. And often there's times we can connect the dots, but they're hard to do too. Right? Just be kind and caring and ask the questions. Thank you.
And I think sometimes, and I'm talking way too
No,
long.
no.
I think there's also times where people are afraid to ask because they don't know what they're supposed to do then, if
Yes.
somebody says that. And
Yep.
so I think it's key to, like I use the broken leg thing, if you saw somebody fall and they broke their leg, you'd get them to the doctor. And in mental health, sometimes, well, I don't know what to do about that. And so it's also being able to educate ourselves on what is out there, what are those resources, because they are resources. Everywhere you look, there's resources. And so that ability to say, I don't have an answer, but I'll help you get to where you need to go. And that ability to say, it's okay, we'll figure it out together,
Thank you, and you don't need to apologize for the fact that we're over time because it's obvious from the conversation, there was a lot of interest, and we will take a 2-minute break. Val, if you don't mind, we'll take a very quick break, and then we'll do some adjusting of the agenda when we get back to make sure that everybody can move along as it. Thank you so much for the presentation. And we will
Thank you.
recess for about 3 minutes. Board of Commissioners. We apologize to everybody who we've thrown off schedule here. I don't know if we'll get you back on schedule, but thank you for your indulgence. We're going to move a couple of the items to later in the agenda. But right now, we are ready for Val Soar, the assessor, talk to us about a True County presentation. This is an informational presentation, correct? There's no
Yes.
action. Thank you very much. And you may proceed if you would state your name and your position for the record.
My name is Val Savor. I'm the county assessor. Good morning. Okay, we're looking at potentially going to a true county assessment process, which would eliminate having local assessors. We do have 7 districts that have local assessors. And what happens is that we sign contracts with all the districts that we do, and we charge them a per assessment rate that the board has approved in the past. And what happens is the 29 districts, we get the contracts, we bill them, and we get this income. And this year it was about $409,000 of income. And the local districts that assess, they do the same thing. They set their budgets and they pay their local assessor a rate. I don't know, I don't see their contracts and I don't see what they are, but we do have 7 districts and there's about 4,400 parcels that are locally assessed. And going true county, that means that we would be doing the assessment for the entire county. We would eliminate the local assessor part of it. And what this would do for us, it would give us a higher quality assessment, more consistent compared to, we do one part of it and they do another part of it. So we're looking for consistency in that assessment. The cost to the taxpayer would be unchanged because the budget, we set a budget, and for our districts that we assess, the local districts set their budgets. But when you go true county, there is no billing anymore. What happens is that the local assessors, or local districts, the small cities and townships, they would eliminate those fees, and everybody that we assess, they would eliminate those fees, and it would actually go into the county's levy. And so it would be an increase in the county's levy, a decrease in the township city levies. We're going to do this with no additional staff. If we did need additional staff, we would be potentially a clerical, and we were looking at, Kelsey had suggested that maybe we do a staff share with somebody if we did need an additional staff. Our staff, by doing this, our staff would be the people knocking on the doors, and they would be actually the people that they would have contact throughout the process. So currently, if the local assessor, if somebody from the local district calls in and says, okay, your assessor was just here, and it's like, well, he's hired by the county, I'll take your phone number down and I will have them call you back. We don't have his phone number and we don't do a direct call to them, so we get their information and then we email it to them. So this would give face recognition to all districts that we assess. We'd be able to explain our processes, and it would be an opportunity for us to give better customer service to our taxpayers. Our data is used by many outside sources, so this is very important that it is accurate. Our staff data enters and reviews the field sheets that come from the local assessors, and they're using notes and information on these field sheets for properties that they've never seen. So there's always the potential and the difficulty that goes with this of errors or interpretation issues when we're trying to data enter the information that they've never seen this property, and it's just raw data that is on the card, and we're trying to match it up with what his thoughts were. So it is difficult for my staff to do this. It's one of their least favorite jobs, but they do it, and and we do 20% of the district assessment every year, so there's 880 parcels that actually come across our desk that we have to data enter. We did give some access to one of the assessors so he could put in some characteristics, but we still go through it, and I'll go over that in just a little bit here. Person who views the property would be also the person the data enters. He would be seeing the final values, which local assessors never see the final values, so they don't really actually know how the numbers actually came out in the end. And they would be the ones that, when the phone calls come in, they would be the same person that would speak to the public and make sure that all questions are answered, and they can actually answer them with responses that, yeah, I was to your property, and I did see this information, and I did data enter it. So they are responsible for it. We currently assess 24,888 parcels on our contract side of it. It's 4,404 that we'd be adding to our assessment which we actually view 20% each year. So after 5 years, we would have viewed everything. And it's more efficient use of the staff's time. Years ago, the assessing process, the local assessors actually took the field book out. They viewed the property. They were given a rate sheet that said this is what the rates are going to be. They would calculate it out. They would put a value at the end of the field card, and the field books would come back to us. And we would actually, all we entered was the land value and the house building structure values, and that was our only responsibility with local assessing. And since 2006, when we turned over to a CAMA-based valuation system, this turned, their job is they knock on the door, scratch some notes down, take information to, and they have to give it detailed enough so that we can actually do something with it when it gets back to my office. And then we put the values in the system, and then I change the values based on sales in the market. And the final numbers are never viewed by the local assessor. So that's the tricky part about this. The things that we do currently, we set up their quintiles, we print their field sheets, we actually pull the blueprints and we draw their new structures already. They all have full-time jobs, and so they don't come into our office very often. And so we do a lot of the legwork already. And every new construction, we go to planning and zoning and we pull the blueprints, we draw them into our Apex system. And when they do the final on those properties, our staff are the ones that actually go knock on the door with the building inspector and view the property, so we get good data right off the bat. And these are in these districts that they're actually being paid to do this, but because of location and where they're out of, we're doing this part of it, so to ensure that we get good data. We pull all the field sheets, we print them, we pull the new construction permits from the databases for here and for whatever districts that they do have. We pull that database and get that data out to them. We do their sales verification calls. So if they have sales in their districts, some local assessors are actually responsible for doing that on their own. We actually do the sales verification call just for consistency in our sales data. And so that data is researched and done on our part to make sure that we have good qualifying sales in our sales study. When I have to raise values at the end of the year, I want to make sure I have good data to work with. We classify and code them per the notes on all the deeds, which that is something that I would highly not give to them because it is complicated. The local assessors, they've scheduled their viewing for their 20%. They view the bare land parcels via pictometry. They prepare the field card for our staff to review and data enter. But like I said, I do have one local assessor that actually does do some of the data entering, but we still, once those field sheets come back, we go in and we verify the permits to make sure that there was nothing omitted. We verify pictometry to make sure that all the buildings are accounted for. We verify that the new permits actually have value and that there was an end of the year value. So let's say a house was started in September and it's not done on January 2nd. We put a % complete on it to make sure that our data is accurate, which he provides it to us, but those are things that we still data enter in the system. We send emails back and forth. I sent you a picture of the pile of field sheets that we get from our local assessors about that tall. And all the little blue tags and yellow tags and orange tags are questions. And so we email back and forth saying, okay, is this what you intended? We have this data in the system, you're showing this data. And so there's lots of back and forth where we feel that it would be more efficient that if my staff viewed it, my staff data entered it, my staff was responsible for the questions, and they actually are required to go parcel by parcel at the end of the year and make sure that the number at the end of the day is what they expected to show up on that field sheet. I did provide a list of, there's 36 counties in the state that are currently state or true county assessment. There's 15 that are not have a resolution that say they're true county, but they don't hire local assessors. And 36 that still use the local process, and we're one of those. If we did make the resolution in a future meeting, it's the second assessment past the current second assessment, we can go true county, which would be for the 2025. And this was my, put you the cost down here. So currently, what we get in assessment fees is, this last year was $409,000. And per the approved billing cycle, we'd be about $422,000. And the $673,500, that is not the change in the levy. That is actually, if we were to stay billing to a local assessor, that's what our levy would be. The actual funds that we would not receive would be about $422,000. So that would be the actual cost to the county's levy. If we went this route, it would be $422,000 of assessment fees that we would not be collecting, but they would also not be budgeted on the local level. So they don't budget it, we budget it instead. So that is kind of the summary of what True County is, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
So, and again, I'll remind that we're not calling for any action on this today, but as information. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Ford?
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair,
Berg.
yeah. Just one quick question. What do you see some of the major downsides of doing this? I see all the positive things, and it's something that looks like we should be really going towards, and you've been wanting to go this direction for a while, so, but any major downsides that,
Other than the budgeting, that is about it. I don't see any downside, because I think our data and our information will be more accurate, and we have more accountability, and we have more face-to-face contact with our clients.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I would just say that there's seems like a really good argument for, so that we have the consistency across all jurisdictions, if that's the right term.
Yes.
My question is, it seems to me that we've had it's been reported to us that it's hard to find assessors anyway, but how do the assessors that are currently doing some of these districts, how are they reacting to, in other counties, as well as the potential for Kaneohe County of going to true assessing?
Our staff actually is excited to go True County, because there's a lot of work involved, and there's a lot of, the time it takes, they spend, I don't allow the newer staff to do this, because it is take a lot of concentration and be able to decipher other people's notes. So I have 3 in my staff that do data entry, but they'll spend about 6 weeks data entering it. And on and off, because they do have other duties, of course. But they're looking forward to going True County, because they feel that it would be a lot easier, and there's less overlap, because we do so many pieces already that there would be less overlap on their time, and it would be more time efficient for them to actually do it themselves. I did talk with all of the districts that do hire local assessors and told them that this was a possibility that was coming up. And they had questions, and we talked about it, and none of them were total standoffish. There was a few that are very proud of having their own assessor, and they feel that I think there's some, they feel that their assessor sets the values, but it's ultimately I'm responsible for everything, and I do set the values, and I think there's some misunderstandings that they think that they set the values. And I use sales data, I use market reports, I spend a lot of time reviewing this data, and ultimately I am responsible for their work, and I am responsible to set the values.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for the chair or the administrator. When would we be bringing this back up again for a more in-depth discussion? I assume it's going to need to take place prior to having budget set?
Yes, that would be correct. We'd have to bring the resolution back in June, and then it would go into effect in 2024.
Because it's if I may, because it's a, pretty good bump to the general levy. I'm just wondering if we would need a work session on that, just thinking out loud. With that, and maybe combine it with something else that we might come across.
Well, and I think that brings up a good point. If that would be something that the chair of the board would want to do, And this has been really talked about between the previous administrator and the county assessor for the past 3 years on moving towards this. And so the point of the presentation today was if you have any comments or questions, even in the meantime, we can always put this back on the agenda at the second board meeting in May or the first meeting in June again, or if you want to schedule a work session. But this would be something that we would have to approve in June.
And I can attest to, oh, go ahead.
Okay,
Commissioner.
yeah, so my question is, something on here about the comparison, county versus local assessor. You have local assessed districts, and then you have some are in black and some are in red. I'm kind of confused what the black ones mean. I think I understand the red is, it says one local assessor, and then the ones in black are assessed by another. I don't know.
Yep, I have 2 local assessors. That's all we have left. And so all of the black districts are assessed by one district or one assessor, and the red ones are assessed by another gentleman.
Oh, okay.
And so the other thing that he is also putting his notice in that he, after next year, he will not be assessing, and he's the one that has the majority of the districts. So we potentially could be in a loss of an assessor, and if they can't find a hire, they would actually have to hire the county again. So that would eliminate part of the
Okay,
concern.
so basically it's 2 assessors that do those 2
Yep.
colors there, or the
Yep.
whatever. Okay, thank you.
And I can attest to the challenges they face. I think it was 2 years ago, we were called out to a property in my district where that assessor was really somebody who wasn't local. And so they didn't quite understand all the nuances of the property. And we had to meet out there and we had to make an adjustments largely because of the lack of familiarity. And so they had to do the work, ended up doing the work anyway, so. I know it can be a little difficult for those people that are making a living assessing, but in this case, it shouldn't be very hard because he's putting in his notice anyway, or that person.
Yes.
So, all right, well, thank you very much for the presentation. I know it's kind of a lot. I've heard it about 3 times, and so I'm learning more about assessing with every move. So, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, so we will then go to the update from the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Tollefson and Deputy Bauman. Welcome.
Morning. Thanks for having us here. Oh, not sure if I'm up here or not. Leave me hanging. Just wanted to take this opportunity.
For those listening, will you state your name and your rep?
Eric Tollefson, Canada County Sheriff. So, wanted to take some time to recognize some accomplishments that Chief Deputy Bauman has achieved in his career here with the Sheriff's Office. Him taking the role of Chief Deputy required him to give up a few things. You got to kind of clean your plate to take on your new role. And one of the things that Kent was doing was our SWAT commander. So when he was appointed, that was one of the things that he retired from. Kent was on the SWAT team for 24 years. He spent his last 9.5 years as our commander. And one of the things that he was, real involved in and was real integral in was combining our joint Meeker Candy SWAT team, which we have right now. Kent took an active role in that. And as a result of that, and plus all the other stuff that you do over the course of a career, he was recognized recently at our SOTA banquet. SOTA is the Special Operations Training Association for the Upper Midwest. So it's an organization that's, Kent will correct me if I'm wrong here, but that kind of specializes in seeing to kind of cutting edge training for our local SWAT operatives, and then also the crisis negotiators, and then the medics that make up our SWAT teams around the Upper Midwest. So we had our annual banquet on April 17th up in St. Cloud, and Kent received a couple of awards there for his work. So he received the Commander of the Year, which I thought was pretty cool, and then also he received the Meritorious Service Award. So he had to give an impromptu speech in front of about 650 people, so he nailed it. He did good. So that was really neat. We had quite a representation from our combined team up there at the banquet. This, of course, was right in the midst of us planning the funeral for Deputy Josh Owen up in Pope County, who was killed 2 days prior. So we had a kind of a busy week there, making it to the banquet and then seeing to the funeral plans there. But I don't know how much time I have, but I can answer any questions you guys may have as to what we've been up to lately. But just wanted to recognize Kent for these awards and his accomplishments with the SWAT team. So he's going to be missed, but we've got, well, I guess a younger generation, there's no other way to put it, that's stepping into these leadership roles, which I think is pretty cool. And we're real happy with the leaders that we've developed over the years. And we're pretty confident that it's in good hands.
Thank you, Sheriff. And Deputy Bauman, if you would make your way up there, because if you can speak to 650, you can speak to a dozen. But before you do, I just want to say that we've heard from, and I'm sure other commissioners have heard from colleagues, particularly in Pope County, extending their gratitude for you guys stepping in and covering for the Sheriff's Department in Pope County as they dealt with the loss of one of their members, and they were very appreciative of your help and help for other counties around the state.
Yeah, Chief Riley and Chief Deputy Brecht up there, a couple of the nicest folks you'll ever meet, and they were really hit hard by this, as anyone would be. But when we put out the call for people to fill shifts and dispatch, and like I had mentioned in an email to you guys earlier, but us along with other agencies filled their shifts, so they didn't have to work until that following Monday morning at 7 a.m. So it fell together that Monday is when we were working on doing that schedule for Pope County. And so we along with, like I said, several other agencies, we didn't have to twist any arms, and people just stepped right up. And so I think our agency put in about 312 hours up there. So, which was, yeah.
Very appreciative. On a higher note, Deputy Bauman.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Eric. So Eric was a longtime member of the SWAT team as well, so he and I have a long history of working together in that realm. As far as this award goes, or the awards, one of them had to do with some ongoing things we had done to advance our department, and especially the SWAT team. A long time ago, and we really emphasized it now since January, wanted to become reestablish ourselves as a regional resource for Candiac County being able to assist. And in 2022, we had some opportunities to do that, and part of that award had to do with that. But I was more humbled, I think, by and honored by our team putting me in for that, because truly it was a team response. Being a combined team, we have a lot more assets that we have at our disposal, and we were able to handle 3 specific barricaded subject calls in 2022. All had either shot a firearm or had access to firearms and threatened to use them, and we were able to handle all those with very minimal injuries, no injuries to officers at all, as calmly and as tactically as we could. So with that, it's definitely a team response, but even bigger than that, if you look at it, we were doing some numbers for a court case coming up that we were involved in, and just the man hours for a 2-day standoff, we had 97 people involved from other agencies, including ours. We had the biggest footprint, and over 1,000 man hours. But if you look at that and you do a one-off of that, if you think about the families of our own that are involved in that, the changing in schedules, the unknown of what you're going into and when you're going to come back with little or no information, almost a vacuum, maybe even more so than other people that know what's going on. So I'd have to take a moment and also honor our family circle, part of the SWAT team, my wife, Eric's wife, all the wives and spouses that are involved in that, with the unknowing part of what we're getting into until maybe they get a text afterwards that everything's fine, we're on our way home, things like that. But just the day in and day out trauma of dealing with that, or the phone rings at 2 a.m., not knowing it's bad and not knowing what we're getting into. There's a whole nother level of honor, I think, that we need to make sure that we're accountable for. And I just wanted to express that today in front of the board. So, but I thank everyone. I thank Eric. I thank the team that put me in for it, that it is truly a team response. So,
Well, thank you guys both.
Okay.
You know, only imagine what your family's thinking when you go out on these calls, because Judy worries like hell about me falling over when I'm out tapping trees out in the woods.
I can tell you that, so obviously a lot of our gear is Velcro related, and my wife always used to hate the Velcro noise going on, but she learned to appreciate that noise of the Velcro coming off, because that means that we made it home. And they're very appreciative when they hear the door or the garage door open that we're actually back home again. So I know as a fact that exists, so.
And Kent actually remembered to thank Melanie in front of those 650 people. So
Good for you, Ken. You know which side the bread the butter is on, right?
There you go. Message received. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Gary, thank you for your patience. Gary Gear, Environmental Services, thanks for your patience.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Gear, Candido County Environmental Services Director here with the agenda item to discuss awarding the bid for the recycling center building. I just wanted to go through a little bit of a timetable, I think, to recap how we've gotten to this day. And I would say that in 2018, we had begun discussions with the possibility of transitioning to single-sort recycling program due to significant equipment upgrades that we were looking at within the facility, as well as public interest in the single-sort program versus the multi-sort that we had been operating. In March of 2020, due to COVID, our labor force to operate, both Sentence to Serve and West Central Industries, were all quarantined. That kind of put us on a fast track or bumped us up to making a decision to what are we going to do. Therefore, in May of 2020, the county board contracted to provide countywide single-sort recycling service beginning in August. Then in June of 2020, the county board voted to sell all of the equipment that was within the building. Then throughout 2021 and 2022, Administrator Kleindl, I think, worked with the board and staff in an effort to sell the building. CCT had expressed interest, and I know Mr. Kleindl had worked with them multiple times, discussions as to how that might fit to work for them. Ultimately, they chose to go in another direction. So with that, Administrator Kleindl's and staff's input, I think, was that it's a commercially built building, 28-foot ceilings, very uniquely built, 7 loading docks. And with that commercial use, it was with that understanding that the board on September 19th of 22 approved initiating the process for the sale of the recycling center, which would include platting the property and then advertising for bids. So in November, we did go through the platting procedure with the City of Willmar Planning Commission and ultimately got a preliminary plat and final plat approved. And then county board went ahead and said, go ahead and advertise on December 20th. I'm sorry, on November 15th, and then in December for a bid opening. So on December 20th was our first bid opening. We did not receive any bids, and Administrator Kleindl recommended sometime after January of 2023 that the county board may take it up again to advertise for bids, which the board did on February 7th of this year. With a bid opening on March 7th, we received that one initial bid for $90,000. Some discussion was held at that time about the value of the structure, and staff had given you input of $481,000 kind of to make us whole with that building and with that property. And then the board tabled taking action on March 7th to March 21st, and then did ultimately reject that initial bid that we received, and then had us re-advertise to sell the recycling center building. That brought us to April 18th of this year, and 6 bids were received because at the bid opening, ranging from $250,025 to $552,000. And staff at that time, 2 weeks ago, would review those for completeness and come back with a recommendation. And that's what I'm doing today, recommending that the bids received have been reviewed and found to be complete, and would recommend awarding the bid to the high bidder at $552,000 for the recycling center building.
Commissioner Berg.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we, the board approve the bid to Williamson's Properties and the bid of $552,000.
You heard a motion from Commissioner Berg. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any discussion? Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gary, a couple of items. Just to be clear, Williamson Properties, is that the vendor that also does our recycling currently?
That is, it's the same ownership, correct? Williamson Properties LLC is owned by West Central Sanitation.
Sure, okay. And I think we were probably all in receipt of one letter from a county constituent expressing some reservations over selling the property because it's their belief that single sort isn't sustainable. I think that would be condensing what they said. And I believe I forwarded that on to you as well. And just wondering if you've seen this?
Yeah, apologize, I have not seen that yet, so not aware of that letter or information.
Well, I hope I sent it.
And I hope it's not in my spam.
But their idea is that we might need to go to some sort of a modified sorting, manual sorting system in the future, and they express that there are other municipalities and entities that are finding single sort to be problematic. And then they also bring up the question of not enough pickups out in the rural areas, which I agree is an issue that we do need to discuss. Any thoughts or comments?
Single sort isn't perfect. There certainly is. I've been to the facility that all of our recyclables go to. It's Demcon is the name of the company in Shakopee, Minnesota, and it's a fantastic facility to go through and see. But certainly, some of their biggest problems, and you alluded to it with sorting, is our people's lack of attention to what should be put in the containers as recyclable. It's a lot of things that go into their initial bring into their facility that gives them troubles in their equipment. Significantly, plastic bags. There's so many rollers and sorters too that are automated that the plastic bags get wound up in that then they have to shut down. And so when you're shut down, you're not making money. So it gives it difficulties. So I'm sure there will be continued work with manufacturing equipment, sorting equipment, and or a need for manual labor sorting that could become a future issue.
Mr. Gear, I see our next presenter is in the hallway, and we need a couple minutes to set up a slide deck. And this conversation, should we stick to the sale of the facility? We have a motion and a second on the floor. And if you have a question about the sale of the facility, and I know that was related, but the single sort and the schedule, maybe we could do it another conversation.
Mr. Chair, if I may, this is a good fit, this group organization, and I think we can talk about that later. I agree.
Okay. Then I would call the question on the accepting the bid for the recycling center. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll take another 3-minute break or so as our next guest is welcomed in. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much.
County Board of Commissioners. And I'd like to welcome today Dr. Cindy Firkin-Smith, who is, I'm going to let you give your title because it seems to move a little bit, to change a little. But Director of Education for Centricare, I think, is pretty close.
That's what it is.
And so what prompted this presentation is some of us were perhaps blindsided, at least I was, by the announced closure of the pharmacy in the Centricare Clinic in New London. And I've known Dr. Cindy Firkin-Smith for several years, along with Dr. Wessler, who serves on the board. And I sent him a message. I managed to keep my frustration out of the message, I think, about what happened. And, you know, which kind of got me thinking about the state of rural, along with Dr. Cindy Firkin-Smith's prompting the state of rural healthcare in Minnesota. I think we heard earlier today about the challenges with mental health providers in rural Minnesota. So thank you for coming. I'm going to let you turn it over to you and let us, for the record, state your name and who you represent.
So commissioners and staff, thank you for having me here today. I am Cindy Firkin-Smith. I am, above all everything else, a rural doctor. I have practiced in Willmar for almost 33 years, so a long, long time. From a title standpoint, I've done a lot of things. My job has changed about every 2 years, the last 8 years. Recently, I was Senior Vice President of the Rural Health Division of Centricare, and recently moved into the leadership role in creating a new regional medical campus for the University of Minnesota with Centricare to address some of the challenges in the state of rural health, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm happy to kind of share what I brought today, and then I'll answer whatever questions you might have. And I'll state right up at the front, I don't have all the answers. We're trying to do the best we can to look to the future, but there are a lot of challenges, and the pharmacy is only one of those. So let's talk about the state of rural health. So you might have seen some of this information before, but if you didn't, it's information that we've been sharing a lot on our journey in the creation of this rural medical campus. 20% of the U.S. population live in rural areas, but only 11% of physicians practice there. So there's a big mismatch. There's a shortage of physicians all across the country, but there is a real big maldistribution in rural areas. People who live in rural areas are most likely to be uninsured, and they live further away from health services. I know you've seen that before. The people we care for out here tend to be older, poorer, less educated, and sicker than their urban counterparts. Rural residents often have limited access to healthy foods and fewer opportunities to be physically active compared to their urban counterparts. We have higher risks of obesity and hypertension and higher rates of smoking. Rural Americans are most likely to die from heart disease, cancer, unintentional injury, chronic respiratory disease, and stroke than people who live in cities. And interestingly, during COVID, we had higher death rates from COVID as well than our urban counterparts. There are fewer healthcare workers, and the ones that we have are getting older. I'm a good example of that. We have fewer specialists, fewer critical care units, fewer ERs, and fewer transportation options. And if you've been paying at all attention to the press, you know that EMS is one of those areas that's really challenged as well. We depend on volunteers for a lot of our EMS, and we're getting fewer and fewer volunteers. The median age of rural physicians, if you're not aware, is age 58. And if you look at Minnesota Department of Health data, 1 in 3 of those rural physicians plan to retire within the next 3 to 5 years. So if you haven't seen that data, that's real, it's remarkable, and we're sitting on the edge of a cliff. I have been recruiting rural physicians every single day of the almost 33 years that I have worked in rural Minnesota, and it has gotten more difficult, not easier, to recruit rural physicians and healthcare professionals. So what about rural medical students? Medical students from rural areas are 5 times more likely to choose rural areas to practice. Makes sense, right? If we can get somebody from a rural area, go to medical school, or in fact go into any profession, we're more likely to get that person back to a rural area than we are to get somebody from Edina or the downtown Minneapolis. But the number of rural medical students with a rural background is actually decreasing. There are a lot less kids from rural areas applying to, being accepted to, matriculating to medical schools than there were when I started. And actual data from 2017 demonstrated that rural medical students represented less than 5% of incoming medical students. So let's think about that for a second. If rural docs right now are less than, 5% of physicians are less than 10% of physicians, whereas 20% of population is out here, and we're only training 5% of physicians that are rural in origin. We are in big, deep trouble. We all know that we have increasing numbers of immigrant and minority populations, underserved populations in our rural communities. In the communities that we serve, in some of our communities, we have more kids of color in our elementary schools than we do not kids of color. Less than 0.05% of students in medical school are kids of color from rural backgrounds. Shocking. So for the number of matriculating rural medical students to become proportional to the number of rural residents, we'd have to quadruple that number. It would take years to do that, but we've got to do something. So COVID made things worse. Recruitment and retention has been challenged. You've probably heard the term burnout. We've had burnout across physicians, across nursing, across all types of healthcare professionals. I've suffered significant moral injury, we talk about, the difficulty with taking care of some of these critically ill patients, taking care of patients that we had the ability to save but didn't have the resources to save, fear of contracting viruses, fear for their families. Certainly vaccine and mask mandates were an issue, but we had as many staff that were concerned that we weren't doing enough from a vaccine and mask mandating standpoint. So it was a win and a not win, no matter what side of that issue that you sat on. And then, of course, we had a lot of staff that went into traveling for a variety of reasons, more control over their schedule and higher potential for compensation. So lots of challenges with recruitment and retention during COVID. And we're only starting to see a little bit of recovery from that, but in no way the recovery that we need. So finance has added to the challenges. You who are in business know that we have increasing fixed costs in all of our businesses, healthcare, incredible increasing fixed costs. To continue to pay our staff, we have had to increase the amount of money that we pay them, appropriately so, but it's hard when you don't have that money. Stuff has been increasingly difficult to get. We had stuff shortages during COVID, and we still have stuff shortages. We have supply chain issues that come and go in a variety of different areas. Our reimbursement rates are decreasing. So when you have costs that are increasing, but the amount of money coming in to supply those costs are going down, it creates a math problem that's very, very difficult to maneuver. Our payer mixes are a challenge in rural health. Rural sites have higher concentrations of government pay, uninsured patients, and underinsured patients. Our government pay reimbursement is continuing to go down, and we don't negotiate with the government. We have poor, underinsured, often sicker patients that often utilize more resources in high-cost settings. I'm sure you're aware of that. These people often end up having to get their care in the emergency rooms, which is the most expensive place to get it. You already talked a little bit about the challenges with mental health patients. There are times that more than half of the patients sitting in our emergency rooms are those that are there primarily or only for mental health reasons. We have difficulty moving those patients out of our emergency rooms because there's no place to send them. So Centricare, I'm sure you're aware, is considered the largest rural healthcare system in the state. We have made it our goal, our mission, our vision over the next 10 years to address these problems. We're not going to run from them. We are committed to the patients we serve in rural Minnesota. And so we have created a vision that we call Making Rural Health or Rural Life Healthier. And that's an investment in the health of our people, our communities, and our future. The question we ask, if not us, who? If not now, when? So we're not depending on anybody in St. Paul to solve these issues for us. We'd like some help, obviously. We'd like some funding for some of the things we do, but we know that we've got to do this ourselves. We're certainly not depending on the people in Washington, D.C. to truly understand the challenges that we face every day. We have to take charge. We rely on everyone in our communities to help us take charge of these issues. So I have a video. I don't know if it'll play. The browser is no longer supported. Well, we might not be able to do that. How about that one? No. No. Firefox, will you do it?
This is one of our rural channels.
All right, so how can I will escape from that and I'll just go beyond. Since it won't play, I had a cute video, but it won't play it, so we will just go beyond and from current slide. That video actually talked about our vision of the regional medical campus, and it's really cool, but we'll show it on a day when it actually works. My IT skills are not perfect, but I've learned I can live with it and live without it as well.
I'll see if I can get someone in here to help.
It's okay. It's all right. If we have a chance at the end, it's kind of fun, and if not, it's okay. One of the things that we have decided to do is to create a regional medical campus of the University of Minnesota. It's a big step, right? But you already saw that we don't have enough rural kids that are going into medicine. And the way that we've been educating medical students in the last 52 years or beyond hasn't worked. There hasn't been a new regional medical campus in Minnesota for 52 years, and that's when the Duluth campus was opened. We know that if rural students go to medical school, they're more likely to come back to rural areas. We believe that by putting a rural campus in western Minnesota in our area is the answer to this challenge. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that. We have created this collaboration with the University of Minnesota. We have a successful relationship with the University of Minnesota from a medical education standpoint for years. Most of the physicians that you guys seen have some relationship with the University of Minnesota. Most of our physicians at CentraCare have been educated or completed their residencies at the University of Minnesota. And we started a very successful orthopedics program with them the last few years that has grown like leaps and bounds astronomically. We in fact have residents that will be formally rotating with our University of Minnesota physicians in the residence or in the program at CentraCare starting this fall. And so we're going to build on that academic affiliation. So what does this look like? We're creating a CentraCare academic health system. So we're creating a medical school, but it's beyond that. It's all about our communities, collaboration, commitment, and care. So if you look at the right side of this diagram at the top, medical school is undergraduate medical education, okay? That's the medical students that we talked about. The one thing about medical students is when they come out of medical school, they're not fully prepared to practice. They have to have a residency. They have to enter a residency in family medicine or surgery or dermatology or something. And so we're committed to creating additional residencies as well. We're currently looking at residencies in the highest need specialties in our region, which would be family medicine. We actually have a family medicine residency in St. Cloud right now. It's been very successful the last 20 years. It has 6 residents per year. If you're not aware, we're actually creating a residency in Wilmer that will have 2 family medicine residents per year as well. We're looking at also expanding in other residencies that we'll talk a little bit more about. The Rural Health Research Institute will be a collaboration of the University of Minnesota as well. We already do research and primarily research in cardiology and oncology, but we want to expand that. We know that delivering evidence-based state-of-the-art medicine in rural Minnesota is one of our commitments, and we know that we can enhance that by bringing our patients into the research focus of the University of Minnesota. It's really hard for our patients to get involved with research because nobody wants to travel down to the Twin Cities to be part of any type of research study. But if we have those out here, we believe that that's how we're going to be able to deliver that cutting-edge medical care to the people that we serve. On the left is education that we already do, continuing medication, education of our allied health professionals, and other academic affiliations. Now, I wasn't aware until I took this job how many affiliations we actually have. This is phenomenal. In Kandiyohi County, we've had as long as I know, 50-year plus relationship with Ridgewater College, and it's been very successful, primarily at producing nurses and medical assistants. We're looking at expanding those and creating increased opportunities in academic affiliations and health programs in these and other institutions that want to collaborate. We know that it's not just medical students we need nurses, we need respiratory therapists, we need physical therapists, we need medical assistants, we need CRNAs, we need everything. The one thing that we're going to do is we're going to examine all of these relationships. We want to know that the people that we're committing our time to are also committed to rural Minnesota. And so it makes sense for us to concentrate on rural students and students that are interested in practicing in rural Minnesota. So what exactly does this undergraduate medical campus look like? As I said, it's a regional medical campus of the University of Minnesota, collaboration between the University of Minnesota Medical School and CentraCare. This is actually a new model. It's a joint venture between our two institutions. The University of Minnesota will be the degree granting institution. The accreditation comes through them. By doing that, it allows us to access what they've done from an educational standpoint, and it also allows us to speed up the process. Trying to do it from scratch, de novo, is a very, very long, very complicated, and very, very expensive process. We can collaborate, affiliate, reduce the expenses, and improve the outcome by working together. We plan a 4-year campus, so we will have students starting their first year in the anatomy classes on the ground in St. Cloud. We plan 24 students a year, and that first year class will begin in August of 2025, so not too far away. We are actually going to start this fall with 3rd and 4th year rotations from the University of Minnesota. We're going to start with general surgery students coming out. They're going to live in our communities. They're going to rotate with our surgeons to kind of get a taste for what it looks like and feels like to be in rural Minnesota. It's a new world, right? COVID taught us that we do things differently. Up to 50% of the classes that will be delivered are asynchronous. That means that these students will have the opportunity to get some of their classes online. And so that we won't have to necessarily duplicate all the things that have been produced at the University of Minnesota. Now, here's the fun thing. The first day that I was on the job, I went up to Duluth and I spent all day talking with people up there who've done rural education for 52 years. And one of those hours I spent with about a dozen University of Minnesota medical students. And I asked them, if you had the opportunity to design the perfect rural medical school, what would it look like? And let me tell you, that was fun. If you want to talk with people who really matter and know what it should look like, go to the students. The one thing I heard from them was they want to be part of the community, right? They want to be part of the community. So we envision creating a flavor for our medical school that's very, very community-based. These students might take their anatomy classes in St. Cloud, but they won't do all their rotations in St. Cloud. They're going to be embedded in our communities throughout West Central and Southwest Minnesota, and they will be part of our communities. The students expressed strong interest and a commitment to actually spending time in our schools. I have spent time with principals and superintendents from area high schools to ask them, how many of their kids have gone into medicine in the last 10 years? And the answer that I got from them was none, which is an answer I really didn't want to hear, but one I wasn't surprised to hear. What they think, what the principals and superintendents told me, is that they don't think their kids believe that this is something that they can achieve, that they're not going to college because they're not being exposed to it. We know that if we get medical students into these communities and into these high schools, we'll show these kids that they can do it too, that this is something that they can achieve. I'm very excited about that. Not all of these kids will want to be doctors, right? But there will be some that want to be nurses or respiratory therapists or physical therapists or medical assistants or all those other things. We just need to get in there and show them what they can become. We're already talking with other colleges. I had a meeting with Dr. Wacker at St. Cloud State last week about building pipeline programs where we can identify really talented undergraduates or even talented high school students, creating pipelines where they can be scholarshiped through college and then offered a guaranteed spot in medical school. That's how we're going to keep our rural kids out here. And then the graduate medical education I mentioned, we talked about the residency in St. Cloud. We talked about the fact that we're going to have residents in Willmar as well. The Willmar residency is going to be based in the former FPMC building, so the Lakeland building. It's closest to the hospital, so that makes sense. We're talking about creating other residencies in general surgery, internal medicine, psychiatry, OBGYN, pediatrics, and who knows what. Whatever we think that we can do, whatever we need to serve our community. So I'm here to share that with you. We know there's a lot of challenges, but we're not going to sit back and just wait for them. Tell us that we can't do it. I've committed 33 years to rural Minnesota, and I'm going to retire eventually, but I'm not going to leave it behind. We're going to make sure that we have physicians and healthcare professionals to serve people in West Central Minnesota, despite the challenges that we face. And I'm happy to answer whatever questions that you might have. And if somebody wants to try to make the video work, that's fine. We can do that as well.
Dr. Fergus Smith, I think our help is standing right behind you, and so while he works on that, I know you have a very busy schedule, so we'll try to, if you stay up there, just move to the other side of Ray while he works on that.
And I'll stay as late as you need. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. I want to make sure you get your questions answered.
So-
And I can do my best with the pharmacy, but I don't have all the answers either.
So somebody,
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I got a question. So my eyes been opened about medicine out in the rural area. It's getting kind of hard to find even nurses, am I
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And so as a result, a lot of these places are looking overseas and they give people worker visas. And I kind of know that firsthand because my wife, she's from the Philippines, and she's got a cousin that just got brought over to up by Fargo and his spouse to work there as nurses. So it's that bad. I mean, we can't even get enough nurses and people in the medical profession in this country that we have big shortages. So
Absolutely. We have looked overseas as well. Couple issues there. Some of the immigration issues make it really challenging. The people we get are phenomenal, really committed, really outstanding. The other thing is you don't want to totally drain all of those countries either. You know, they need their medical staff. As much as we want them and want them to be successful, we'd love to just raise people up and educate them locally as well.
Commissioner Berg did, or I don't know who that,
I think
Commissioner
Steve was
Gardner,
ahead of me, and then I'll have a question, or did you?
did you have a question?
I did not.
Oh,
I thought you saw him raise his
Not
hand.
yet, but if you
Just-
want me
just
to,
a
I'll
couple-
think of one.
I've got several.
Actually, I
I
will.
have like three questions, and probably my last question, I'll ask it first, but, you know, what can the board do?
Right.
You're talking about collaboration, but then, and you sound like, it looks like you have a plan. Maybe I should have asked the question. No. The other question is, you know, you're talking about residencies locally and so forth, and using our local kiddos or whatever going to school here. What's the incentive for them, and how do they go about it? So, you know, let's say somebody has a child that's going to be graduating this year and they go to Ridgewater, for example, or whatever, or they're graduating from Ridgewater and they want to pursue this. Is it any more reasonable, cheaper, or any advantage to go through the system you're talking about to keep that person in the rural area, or are we going to lose them to other metro
Well,
areas?
That's an outstanding question. Thank you for that. This is why we want to have the medical school out here and have all of these educational programs in rural Minnesota, is because we believe that if we keep them here, we're more likely to keep them here for a lifetime. What is the saying? How do you keep them down on the farm after they've seen gay parade? Some of those kids get used to the urban areas and don't come back. We think we have everything there that we can offer here. Now, as to what can we do to keep those kids, first of all, we need to make sure that they know that they can do it. So we need to create programs in elementary schools, junior highs, and high school students to get them exposed. There's a program called HOSA, which is kind of the FFA for healthcare students that we're trying to get started up in a lot of our schools locally. We need advisors and sponsors, mentors, everything else from healthcare professionals, so these kids know who to talk to, and we're looking at that as well. We need to make sure that we create opportunities for shadowing and for exposure for kids that have never had that opportunity. You know, maybe my kid could come follow me if he or she wanted to, right? But not all kids have that opportunity. And then for kids that don't have the financial means, we need to find ways to make sure that they do have the financial means. We've created one scholarship in Wilmer so far called the Growing Our Own Doctors Fund, that will scholarship 1 to 2 students per year in medical school, total tuition and fees, provided they come back and serve southwestern Minnesota after they graduate. So we're looking at more and more of that. And what can you do? Support it, talk about it, engage people. Let me know if you know talented students. Let me know if you have ideas that we should be doing. And right now, the Minnesota legislature is discussing whether or not they're going to help us fund some of this. It's expensive. We're committed to funding what we can, but recognize that having some help from the legislature at a time when they've got a few $1 billion would be really helpful. We're asking for one-time funding, and they're debating it this week. So if you have anybody to call and could say, hey, we need this in rural Minnesota, that would be very helpful.
So I think one of the things that you brought up, the rural responders earlier in your
Yes.
presentation, and as a result of an article that was in the local paper, I reached out to Commissioner Steve Schmidt from Meeker County and Jack Swanson from Roseau County, who were public safety policy chairs, as well as Carly Stark, who is the policy analyst at AMC. And it actually got some attention as a result of a lot of us in rural Minnesota are struggling with the
Yep.
with the responder issue. Not everybody, but many are. So I think there's power in numbers, and I see that the map for Centricare covers a lot of counties. And so I don't know what questions to ask, but if we were provided with that, we could perhaps approach our association to see if there's legislative advocacy help that we could give. One of the questions I have about your hospital proposed is, that's an undergraduate program.
Which,
The regional medical.
no, UME is medical school. It's an MD program. Yeah, it's confusing, but UME is.
The one at
an MD program.
Centricare. So they would still go off and get their undergraduate degree at
They would have to have-
Hamlin or St. Ben's or,
Yep,
St.
any of
Cloud
the
State
above.
or whatever.
Yep, any of the above.
Got it.
Yeah, so they'd have to have a bachelor's degree before they start medical school.
Okay. Perfect. Ray, did you have any success or?
No, I was gonna ask, is it some type of format? Do you know
It's
how
on-
the video is done? Because it's looking for a browser, so.
Yeah, it
The
needs a
question is
browser.
what the format is, what the URL is or whatever. Do you know
Oh,
what that is?
Do you have a,
I tried to figure it out. I couldn't find it out.
so I'm not. Do what you want. No, I don't know. It's okay. All right, thank you though.
Sorry about that.
Thanks,
Sorry about that,
Ray,
guys.
for your.
I tried. It's all
assist.
right.
Any other questions, Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you for giving me time.
And when you have to
remember.
leave, Dr. Smith, Firkin Smith, you just let us know.
Thank you for giving me the time to come up with my question, because I knew I had one.
Okay.
Dr. Smith, as it relates to rural public health, do you see any synergies or collaborations with our local public health?
We see collaborations and synergies with everything. One of the University of Minnesota is actually revamping their entire curriculum, and we've never been very good in medical school about integrating public health into that, but community-based and public health is integrated into the new curriculum. And so how that works with the public health, specifically the department, I can't tell you for sure, but the commitment to public health, preventative health, is a part of the curriculum that's being emphasized.
And I said as an alternate to the SHAC board, and so, we work a lot with MDH on the next generation of public health. What does that look like? With the intent that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, where you live, what your zip code is, you should have the same fundamental access to public health care as anyone else within the state. And I think that dovetails well with what it is that you're trying to do here.
Yeah, and we agree with that. And you guys probably know that health outcomes are primarily determined by zip code. It's just amazing.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I'd just
Thank you
like
for the
to
time.
thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. And if there's anything we can do, let us know. I know it was prompted by, in my case, the closure of the proposed closure of the pharmacy in New London, making it more difficult for the residents there to get their prescriptions. But there are other issues. We heard it earlier today about mental health, access, treatment, and professionals, so.
We are working on the pharmacy issue as well. And if you probably figured out that the newspaper article said it all. I mean, it's a matter of staffing and expense. So,
Yeah.
but we're trying to figure out how we can address that problem. Coburn's announced that. So.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
All right, we are going to move to, try to get back to on schedule, well, the schedule's messed up. But Connie, I think we're down to the appointing the county recorder. I think everything else above that is covered, right? Or Mel's got about 3 and you've got about 3. We'll do them in a cluster.
You can just wait till
Okay.
next month,
Connie?
and I'll just go find something else.
Thank you for having me this morning. My name is Connie Mort. I'm the Human Resources Director for Candido County. I come before you today with a follow-up to an action that was taken on the March 6th board meeting. At that time, the board approved the appointment of an interim county recorder, Julie Munson, who was part of our staff at that time, and she has been since serving as the interim county recorder. Julie has agreed to accept the position if the board so moves to appoint her as the regular county recorder on a permanent basis until what time that Ms. Munson might retire or leave the position. So I do have that, and I think it was included in your board packet, the resolution itself, the request for approval. Interim county recorder Julie Munson was appointed by the board effective March 6th. County administration is requesting that the board appoint Julie Munson the county recorder.
We don't see a resolution number, but there is a request that I would entertain a motion to accept the staff recommendation to appoint Julie Munson
Julie Munson,
as
yes,
the interim
as a county recorder.
county recorder. She's been the interim.
She is the interim at this time.
So how do you wish to proceed, Commissioner Gardner?
I will move the appointment of Julie Monson as the county recorder.
So we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any questions or comments?
One brief one. Connie, it says this would remain ineffective until she vacates the position. Is this something, because we have another action involving our county engineer, is this something that needs to, an appointment that needs to be
Reappoint.
renewed periodically?
No, once she's appointed as the county recorder, it would remain effective until what time that she would vacate the position. So whether that be a resignation or a retirement, that would be the point then.
That's the clarification I was looking for.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? I had a similar question. In the event it isn't working out, can we revisit it if it's not working out as recorder?
Well, it would be based on this, she is an employee, so we would base it on the same performance evaluations and criteria that we would have for any other employee.
Because essentially, as it is stated, it sounds like it's her decision if and when to ever leave.
Well, if she were to vacate the position, under whatever circumstances that might be.
Mr. Chair, this is an at-will position then?
Yes.
Yes, I thought.
It's an appointed position. You're probably aware that, the county recorder used to be an elected position. It became an appointed position here in Candy, Ojai County, and has been since that time. But she is an employee, and as such, would fall under the same restrictions, if you will, or guidelines as any other employee and policies.
Any other, it does raise another question, though. So she is like a department head, right?
Yeah, well, she is a supervisor. She's the supervisor of the recorder staff, the county recording staff. She does report to Mark Thompson, who is the county auditor treasurer, and he is the department head. So much is the same way as the license bureau falls under the purview of the county auditor treasurer's office. That would be the same way that this would happen. And I think Kelsey.
If I may, that's something that I was going to update the county board at the last meeting during my report. And so one thing that we have been working on is some restructuring and just kind of putting in job duties that align more with if it's financial or taxpayer services. And we've been working with the recorder's office and the auditor treasurer staff since I started here. And so one of these changes was when the thought process of moving forward now with Julie Munson as the county recorder is that it would be no different as how we view our license bureau, is that supervisor is still, they run their own division, but they report to the auditor treasurer. So that is the same now with the county recorder. They will still be their own division, the county recorder's office. However, that position will be a supervisor, not a department head, and will report to the auditor treasurer. I will present this, I will present the updated organizational chart at the May 16th board meeting. We're meeting with staff tomorrow just to finalize the organizational chart, make sure everybody is signed off on it, and then I will bring that back to the board. But we wanted to get this done as it was fair to Julie Munson, as she has been the interim during this time. I worked at the downtown office. I try to get down there one day a week for a full day, and I've seen the work that she's done. I see that she has staff meetings. There's more collaboration, there's communication. I have no doubt that Julie will fulfill all these duties for within this division. She has a great working relationship with Mark Thompson, our auditor treasurer, and so I do see things moving in a positive direction moving forward, and I have a lot of faith in this, so.
Thank you. But to go back to Commissioner Gardner's question, because I'm still a little unclear on this, at what point, what is the distinction between needing a reappointment and not needing a reappointment? Is it the designation as a department head, or how does that work?
Shane, could you maybe talk to this a little bit, because I know we've had this conversation.
Well, I think it flows from the fact that it had been an elected position and then
Yep.
it turned into an appointed position.
Correct.
Whereas other positions like the Veteran Services Officer, there's specific statute that says it's for a term of years.
Yep.
And there's no corresponding thing for county recorder.
But would that be true of a public works director then too, or?
So years ago, when most of these row offices were elected, they did have the 4-year terms. That's why in state statute, we had to appoint. Like Shane said, the veteran service officer, the county engineer, those are still driven by state statute. So you still need to reappoint. And at the end of the day, Mel is our public works director, but he is our sole county engineer. And that is what the resolution in the board packet is for today. And so when these positions move from elected to appointed, then you don't have to do this reappointment. They become an at-will employee. So they are treated just like any other employee. They follow our pay structure, they follow our performance evaluation and appraisal process and things like that. And so that's where we put that language in there, because it's somewhat mirrored what we have in another appointment, but this is moving this individual into this role, whether they vacate intentionally on their own or whether they vacate because of a performance issue.
Yes, thank you very much for those clarifications and for that additional information.
So we haven't voted, we have a motion and a second, correct?
Correct.
So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Also, the memorandum of agreement with law enforcement labor services.
Yes, I bring before you today a memorandum of understanding or of agreement between the local 22 of the of law enforcement labor services, LELS. So this is just for the bargaining unit for the deputies of Candy, Ojai County. This is the only one that's going to be affected, is that bargaining unit. So this is a memorandum of agreement that would be included with their collective bargaining agreement that is effective through the end of this year, 2023. And what it is that we've had, as you're probably well aware, there has been some staffing shortages in law enforcement, especially in the sheriff's office as patrol deputies. We are working to remedy, I think we have 2 openings right now, and we have been successful in filling our deputies' positions. But we had some movement of staff, that one went to the DNR, which had been a long-term goal of his to do. And then we also had some movement with the new sheriff and also with our new chief deputy And those roles then had to be filled as well, because as you're probably aware, the sheriff was a patrol sergeant, and our new chief deputy was the detective sergeant. And so those positions were filled with internal staff, which caused a domino effect throughout the staffing. And then we have those openings then as deputies. Now, all of that being said is kind of the lead up for this. And as you probably remember, the sheriff had talked about earlier in the meeting about covering some staff shortages in Pope County during the tragic events there. And so there's a lot of our staff, and when I say a lot, I'm not sure how many exactly, but there's staff that have vacation that are rolling off of the books through no fault of their own. They're the one bargaining unit or the one group of staff that can be ordered to come in, and that will be ordered to be part of a patrol. So when that happens, we have a 264-hour cap on our accrued vacation. We only allow vacation to accrue to 264 hours. And then, per the collective bargaining agreement, it rolls off. It's not paid out, it's rolled off. They effectively lose that accrued vacation time by working. So they're not able to take scheduled vacation because of our staffing shortages and because of other events like we had just had, excuse me, through no fault of their own. So what I'm proposing and what the union and administration have talked about, and I'm proposing here today, is for, in the interim, either until we're at full staff and through the field training piece of full staff, or until the end of our contract, which is 12/31 of 2023, that we provide for our staff in this collective bargaining unit, the deputies, to be paid for that excess vacation time instead of having it rolled off unpaid, because they are being required to be staffed. And the alternative, if we don't have enough staffing, we go from, a shift with 4 deputies to a shift with 1 or 2 deputies. It's just not acceptable. And so this is what I'm proposing today, that they be made whole with their vacation time for a short period of time until staffing is to back where we need it to be.
So the question that comes up for me, and I think I understand this, is that because they can't just decide that I'm going to take that vacation time because it's a use it or lose it deal, because they can be ordered in, correct?
That is correct.
Where we couldn't do that with somebody in Public Works or Public Health or Human Services.
Correct. I mean, per statute.
They're not able to use all the hours that they accrue. Are they voluntarily coming in, or are they being ordered in, and are we only going to pay for the time when they're being ordered in and thus losing their opportunity for taking their vacation?
Correct. At this time, they are being required to report for duty because of this, because we need to have our patrols be whole. So at this time, yes, by default, they are ordered to come in and fill those patrols.
Okay.
So it would be whoever would be at the 264 hours, and if they're working and they're not able to take that vacation time, then they would be paid for those hours that rolled over. So, for example, if we had a deputy that had worked full shifts for a biweekly pay period, which is our 2 weeks, and they are now at 264 hours, they weren't able to take any vacation time, but they accrued at, say they're a long-term employee and they're going to accrue another 8 hours of vacation time in that pay period, in that 2-week pay period. So now those 8 hours would just roll off under our current policy or under our current collective bargaining agreement. And so this memorandum of agreement would address that and pay those 8 hours to that employee. And it would be a pay as you go. So instead of saying, okay, well, let's just pay out 40 hours so that we get their cap down, we're looking at significant effect to their budgetary piece of it if we were to do it that way. This way, we're looking at it as basically a stopgap measure until what time we can get our staffing and get our patrols back to whole.
Do you have an estimate of the number of hours that we will be dealing with here?
I don't. I don't at this time. This came up really quickly last week, and we wanted to be sure that we got it into, into the board. But I don't believe it's going to be significant. I know that we're going to have some people out there that have it, but we also have staff that haven't been, that have not been here that long, where they probably don't have those hours of 264 hours built up, or that they're
And I'm
going to
sure others
have that
have-
many hours that will
I'm sure
accrue.
others have question, but that led to another one. So in the following year, after we do contract negotiations, we'll address that in that labor negotiations.
That would be correct.
Other questions from other board members? Commissioner Dwayne Anderson.
Yep. So I think you might have answered it with the chair's question, but so you don't know how many staff it affects right now that are at that threshold, or?
No, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
That's information I should have had. I'm sorry.
And then the other thing would be the reason why there is that cap. It's kind of tough. Really strongly encourage people to take their vacation time. You don't want people never taking vacation.
Right, correct,
Okay.
correct. Yes, I mean,
Under normal circumstances.
under normal circumstances. And we had to address that during COVID as well. There was a lot of people that were frontline workers. Almost all of our people were frontline, let's be honest. And so there was a lot of people that were coming in and they were working, and they were getting close to the top of their vacation, or surpass their vacation cap. And it was just to the point where they had to take vacation in order to do that. And we do have that part of the policy too, where if you take 5 consecutive days of vacation, it's called 40-40-40. You can take the 40 hours of vacation, and then you can elect to have 40 hours paid out of your bank, as long as you have 40 remaining. So there is that piece of it in there as well.
Administrator Baker, you had a comment.
I think I wanted to make sure that we are, this has been discussed with the sheriff and chief deputy as well. So they know that the language that's in this memorandum of agreement, and we will work with the staff. This has been done, I'm not sure if it's been done in this county, but it's been done in other counties. This is one area that not everybody's going to hit that threshold. So I don't want the board to fear this is going to cost the county a lot of dollars. But this is also something that in today's world, our public safety is a huge deal in our county, that we want to make sure that we have shifts covered. And but I think that's where we have to lean on the sheriff and chief deputy, that they will monitor who hasn't been taking time off, things like that. And so it'll only affect a few of our deputies.
That was my understanding. And just to be clear, it was the sheriff and the chief deputy that brought this to our attention. So they were aware of it. They really wanted to be sure that their staff was whole. And I feel that that is commendable on their part as well. They're really looking out for their staff. And it is also, like you said, they can be ordered in. And so it is very different in that regard of this particular collective bargaining unit.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel a little uncomfortable not knowing the exact numbers, but I think it sounds like really an important thing that we do, and I would like to move and make a motion that we would follow these recommendations. And so I'm not sure how to word that. There's three items there. How would I word that motion?
Approve the memorandum.
Approve a MOA with the Sheriff's Department.
So I have a motion on the floor to approve the memorandum of agreement with the Law Enforcement Labor Services, Local 22. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it. I do have a comment too.
Commissioner Dale Anderson, seconds. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I just think it's really important that we do this. I think that, I understand that we're doing that cap for the reason for making them take that vacation. But going back to Kelsey's comment, we have to keep our law enforcement whole on this, and we have to keep them out doing their job and keep everybody safe. So I think this is very important.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Connie, I just want to thank you and senior leadership over at the Sheriff's Department and LELS for looking at this and resolving it in a quick manner. It's not going to affect everybody. It is time limited, and I think it's important, as Commissioner Dale Anderson said, that we need to keep our law enforcement staff whole on this.
Thank you. Yes, it did move very quickly, but we felt it was imperative to do so.
And I would, before I call for I would just, what they said, what everybody said in terms of the importance of it. And I just don't want anybody to get the idea that because we've asked questions that, we're questioning the validity of this agreement. It's more because we have the fiduciary responsibility to ask those kind of questions. And so no way do I want that to reflect our appreciation of the work that they do and trying to make them whole. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all.
Well stated.
Connie, do you have any other ones on the list?
think
My
this-
list is really messy, I have to tell you.
I think that's all that I came to ask for today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Odens, do you want to go next?
Sure.
Or should we? That's fine. And you can take them in whatever order you wish.
Okay. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mel Odens, Public Works Director for Kaneohe County. I'm going to do the first one is the speed study in Roseland. It's on our County Road 5. It's County Road 5 is, and Highway 7, Minnesota Highway 7 is on the southern part of the county, and they're an unincorporated town, so we are the road authority in this area. And so their town board requested that the county consider a speed study. There's kind of a North Roseland and a South Roseland, where Roseland sits on Highway 7, and there's a little bit of a rural gap, and then there's kind of a North Roseland. And they get concerned because there's, it's 55 up to North Roseland, and then 45, and then kind of this rural area, and then 30 miles an hour when you get into town. And so they requested us to consider doing a speed study through this whole stretch. And so I bring that to the board for consistency of that area. And the process through state statute would require Minnesota statute 169.14 requires us to recommend to the Commissioner of Transportation to do a speed study. So my action today would be for the county board to take action to approve Resolution 2023-20, which would request the Commissioner of Transportation to do a speed study in Roseland for the area so designated.
So you've heard staff request to approve Resolution 2023-20 for the speed study. What are your wishes?
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve Resolution 2023-20.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves on 2023-20. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the next item I've got is the consideration of awarding bid number SP 34-070-014. It is our federal grooved-in wet reflective striping. We do about 44 miles in this county a year, 44 to 50. Once again, it's 90-10 money, so it's 90% federal and 10% local. So with that, we opened bids I can't remember, on April 25th, and we received 2 bids, and the recommendation is to award the bid to the low bidder, Sir Lines-A-Lot, from Edina in the amount of $270,078.72.
So you heard Mr. Oden's recommendation. How do you wish to have?
Also moved.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mel. Administrator Baker is going to be going up to the podium to do 2 or 3 or 4 presentations.
Yes, good morning, Kelsey Baker, Candy Ohio County Administrator. I get the pleasure to present the county engineer for Melvin Odens, the reappointment. This is driven, just a little history too on this. This is driven by statute 163.07 that each county shall appoint and employ a county highway engineer who is in charge of the highway work of the county and the forces employed thereon, and who shall make and prepare all surveys, estimates, plans, and specifications which are required of the engineer. All reappointments or appointments shall be done in May, and so that is why I'm bringing this resolution forward to the board to reappoint Melvin Odens as the county engineer for Candy Ohio County.
So you heard Administrator Baker's recommendation. How do you wish to act, Commissioner Gardner?
Mr. Chair, I would happily move the reappointment of Mel Odens under Resolution 2023-19.
Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chair, I would be happy to second that motion, knowing we have probably the best county engineer in Minnesota.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any questions or comments? I just want to say too, I've had the opportunity to work with Mr. Odens. We came on about the same time, but I started out sitting in that very chair because Mark Thompson used to sit here and Gary Danielson sat over there. And so my relationship with the Public Works Director started my very first year. And I think of all the constituent comments that we get as commissioners, Public Works or roads, even if they're township roads, are the number one question we have. And it's very nice for me, at least, to have the Public Works Director at our board meeting, because sometimes the questions come up that we don't think are related, but end up being related. So thank you for all your hard work, and look forward to working with you the next 4 years. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same signs. Motion carries. All right, so I think this page is done. Does anybody see anything we haven't addressed yet on the second page? Then we will move on to the National Centers for, I don't care what order you
Nope, that's fine.
present them in.
Yes, so the next one is the National Center for Public Lands Counties, and I included the letter from the Association of Minnesota Counties. The counties received $50,000 for 2 years from the federal government, and the National Association of Counties, NACO, in the Western Interstate Region is requesting that counties contribute an equivalent to 1% towards these projects and towards the initiatives of this. This was also brought up at the AMC board meeting as well, and that was it was in support of that. So the big federal land counties in Minnesota might include Lake Cook, St. Louis, Itasca, and Cass, and these are very important to counties that size. Most counties in Minnesota are public lands counties, and they also did receive these funds. And so for the ask is a very modest ask of the counties to do $1,000 for 2 years. And so the ask of the county board today would be to approve the $1,000 to go back to NACO to work on the efforts for public lands for counties.
So you heard Ms. Baker's request, Commissioner Gardner?
Mr. Chair, I will move favorably upon the request.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. I'll just add a little bit to the comments that the administrator has made. So even small counties, and Todd Patzer, our colleague in Lac Parle County, is very, very supportive. In fact, AMC is hoping to get all 87 counties, including the metro counties who have very little, if any, payments to support this. Because for a county like Yellow Medicine or Lac Parle, this payment is really a big deal. It's a high percentage of their budget. And so every year we worry a little bit whether or not they're going to continue And this organization is going to work hard at making sure there's education out there to understand the importance of the PILT payments. So Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. And just a reminder for folks here that this was funding that we weren't necessarily aware of until late in the process. It's kind of like money from home, if you will. And our former administrator was made aware of it and asked for and received the funding. And this is an appropriate use of part of that funding.
And I also think that the $1,000 covers both years.
Yes,
not
for 2
1,000
years.
It's not 1,000 per year.
Correct.
And so it's the sum total of the ask is 1% of what we get, so.
Yes.
All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, I believe we're at the second last one. We have one agenda item. We pulled off the consent agenda that we do need to come back to. So let's do Woodland Centers first.
Correct. So today I put on the Woodland Centers board member discussion or decision, but really the decision, I need to clarify that goes back to the Woodland Centers board to make the final decision on appointing the board member. So in the past, Candy Ojai County has two members that sit on the Woodland Centers Board of Directors. One of them has been one of them has been a commissioner, the other one has been the Health and Human Services Director. With the Health and Human Services Director vacant, my recommendation to the board would be to have another commissioner that would sit on the Woodland Centers Board for the remainder of 2023. Once we hire a Health and Human Services Director, then at that time, we can revisit if it's pertinent to have the director sit on the Board of Directors with Woodland Centers or have another commissioner remain on the board. I think there's some pros and cons that I've talked with Commissioner Berg. There's some pros and cons that I've talked with the Human Services staff. And so I think if we have another commissioner sit on the board, that gives us time to figure out what direction we want to go moving into 2024. So this would be the time if there would be a commissioner that is jumping up and down to sit on the Woodland Centers board, that would be to discuss that amongst the fellow commissioners. And then Commissioner Berg would take that back to the Woodland Centers board with the recommendation.
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just like to add, what it involves is a board meeting. It's on the third Thursday of every month at 3 o'clock. And normally then it would probably serve on a subcommittee and it'd be most likely the program committee. And the committees usually meet at 2 o'clock. So that's the main commitments that you would have. Now there's some all staff things or all board retreats or something like that may come up, but that's the most of it at this point.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was made aware of this last week, and in all transparency, Woodland Centers is a professional client of mine, but that would not be difficult at all to remove that impediment. That would work in my schedule. And especially hearing that it is until the end of the year and then figure out what is going to happen after that. I'd be able and willing to take upon that role. I would, on that perceived conflict, I would have someone else from my work take the Woodlands Centers account over at that time.
Any other comments or questions, or anybody else that too would like to serve on the board?
This is for our attorney question. That'd be more of a question, a conflict of interest. Would it not be on Woodland's side that that as a board member, then you wouldn't be able to vote on any of those issues that would involve the products that you would be selling to them, right? Shouldn't be an issue here.
No, I mean, what Mr. Gardner's talking about is removing what would be the basis of any type of conflict, which is the fact that they're a client in one way. Because then that relationship would exist, and then he'd be there freely as a commissioner, and appointed as a board member.
And I think we have been advised by Attorney Anderson at AMC that not every instance like this is an actual conflict. But what I want to do is remove the appearance of a conflict. I just think that's good business, good optics.
Very good. So we're prepared to take action today, or is there no action needed? You got to go back to your board.
Correct, no action needed, so Commissioner Berg will go back to the Woodland Centers Board, recommend that Commissioner Gardner would be willing to sit on the Woodland Centers Board of Directors for the remainder of 2023, and then he will report back.
Okay. Good.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Gardner, for volunteering to be in this. You're welcome.
Now we need to go back to the agenda item that we pulled off the consent agenda, and we have a couple of options here. Yeah, do you want to?
Oh, sure, okay. Yeah, so because we pulled the Greater Minnesota Family Services Addendum on the consent agenda, we need to take action whether we want to table it. Commissioner Berg was the commissioner that pulled it from the consent agenda, doesn't need further discussion. Or if we want to have that discussion and if you want to approve it. So you have a few options. But we need to take some sort of action because we pulled it from the agenda, therefore it then got moved down to the regular agenda.
Mr. Chair, yes. I just wanted just to clarify or just to call to everybody's attention. I believe we may know as a board that some concerns by some individuals about, is this a reasonable amount of increase? And looking at this myself, at the percentage of increase, it looks very reasonable for this year to increase it that much. And I would support this.
So is that a motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion. That we approve this. And it was recommended by Supervisor Kathy Nelson in the negotiations that she felt that was reasonable. But recognizes concerns that everybody's struggling for money and stay above water at this point.
Mr. Chair, I would second the motion for this addendum.
So we have a motion and a second to amend the agreement. I think that's the proper term, amending it. Any discussion? One of the questions I have is, how does this, so this recommendation came some time ago, and how does this align with other service providers that provide a similar service to the county?
This is something that Kathy Nelson, our supervisor down in our Health and Human Services, could discuss and speak about. I don't have that information. What I know is that Kathy received this addendum last March and that she has been doing her due diligence during this time and looking at rates and per diems that are organizations like this, and this was her recommendation to the board. And so therefore, if you want her to speak, we could take a recess and we could see if she could pop up here so she could answer some questions.
And we have to act on this by, I thought there was a time certain that next month or something like that. Last March was a year ago, more than a year ago. And so I don't know that it's been updated in terms of its, like how does it compare to Prairie Lakes, for example? If somebody knows,
Mr. Chair, I can try to respond to that. It is really difficult sometimes comparing one organization provides a service and another organization provides a similar service, but it's really different. And I comparing it to Prairie Lakes, that's a correctional facility basically, and they provide a whole range of different services, and their budget then kind of works through the whole through their whole program. So it's in my mind, you can't really compare those two at all. It's apples and oranges. And some people could argue, well, no, they're both apples or whatever. But it's hard to compare those two. And Prairie Lakes Youth Program is a joint powers program of the county, and their rates is different than this past year, let's put it that way, because of financial issues they were having, and the changes that had to take place there because of that.
And I should clarify, this has been since this past March, not last year, March, a
Yeah.
few months ago, March.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm having trouble explaining that today. A couple months ago. And we're checking to see if Kathy has time to step up here. But I think as Commissioner Berg stated, I think that is a true point.
This is, Mr. Chair, if I
Go
may.
ahead.
Yeah, this is an addendum, so this includes then looking at before, am I understanding this correctly? And we increase the rate above
Correct.
that. So this is an increase, and the concern is, was it enough or not? And if you look at the percentage difference, it was a,
6%
a 6% increase.
and 22%. So, the previous contract that we are considering amending or placing this addendum on it, was that scheduled to run through 2024?
I believe so, but I would have to double check that. I believe this is a standing contract with Health and Human Services. The only thing that's changing why it's an addendum is because of the rates. It's the only thing that's changing. This is a reoccurring contract that the county has with Greater Minnesota Family Services. This is the only part of that contract that's changing. That's why it's pulled out as an addendum.
So the background information says addendum to a current 2-year contract. So that means that we've just entered into this contract a few months ago.
Correct, but it's a reoccurring contract that we've had for many years
Right.
with this organization.
But every time we reoccur or renew, I would guess that the rates are
Reevaluated.
Evaluated, yeah.
Mr. Chair, may I point out that the agreement is between a $30 to $40 per day per person increase. So that's, I think, we'll see how that works.
Well, I guess,
Seems
My-
reasonable to me.
well, my question would be is it more reasonable to go to the end of 2023 and then look at 2024, for the following year? Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I received, and I believe potentially everybody else did too, an email from the director of Greater Minnesota Family Services back on the 24th. And it lays out the rationale for making this additional request as an addendum. And it seemed to me, on the face of it, to be reasonable, considering all of the staff retention and staffing difficulties that all organizations are facing, and they're just simply looking to be able to offer a little more for their employees to be able to attract and retain them. I think that's the rationale behind all of this.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, and so what she says here in her letter,
December.
a lot of them, I don't know if they're all this way, but they have serious mental health needs, and so that's one reason why it's so expensive. I look at my kids and I go, well, it probably cost me about $100 a day, but they're, they don't have issues, other than normal kids, I guess, or everyday kids. But, so these have extra issues that are going on with them. And so that's one reason why it's costing so much. And so they probably have liability issues that they got to deal with, and the costs are higher probably, so.
The part of my question and a bit of a concern actually is not so much how the actual rate compares to Prairie Lakes, but the rate of increase that this organization would get compared to the rate of increase that Prairie Lakes would get.
I I think my recommendation today, now knowing that Kathy Nelson will not be able to appear before the board, is to table this discussion and place it back on the agenda at the May 16th board meeting so that she may be here to answer any of those questions. But I think what I would leave with you today to think about is that there are some differences in some of these facilities. Some the county has a true stake in. Yes, we have partnerships and these types of organizations, but if we do rate increases, that's something that we should be looking at it on an annual basis, a contract base, things like that. But then remember, if we do a percentage that's outside what we have typically done, that's setting a precedence. And so just keep that in mind. But my recommendation would be to table this discussion and place it on the May 16th agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. You've heard the administrator's recommendation?
You looking at me? Or?
I'm just
Oh,
looking at the
oh,
board.
We have a motion, so.
Yeah, so you did have,
So you'd have to
Your
probably
motion.
remove the
Oh,
motion.
I need, yes, that's fine. Yes. I'll say.
I'm comfortable with tabling this.
Table overruled.
So we can table a motion without acting on the
Well,
motion.
he said you would withdraw your motion then.
Yeah, then I'll withdraw my motion.
we have to approve that then. So if you can make the motion to withdraw it, then we'll
I
approve
will.
that and then you can table
Yeah,
it.
so,
And I would withdraw my second. Was my second, right?
okay, motion to
So
withdraw.
we have a motion. I think you can table a motion without withdrawing the previous motion, correct?
Okay.
So all we need is a straight
And that's
motion
what-
to table.
And that's what we want to do.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay, so
Until we've been here a while.
all right.
who has made the motion to table this discussion to time certain of the second meeting in May?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves to table a motion till the second meeting in May. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Amendment, tabling motions require no discussion. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign.
Okay.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Clear as mud.
All right. I know it's late in the day, but I'd kind of like to do a report out the other.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with you because I forgot you last month, Administrator Baker.
That's okay. I think some of the stuff that I wanted to, I just wanted to update the full board on is that on a personnel update, our Health and Human Services Director position has been posted internally and externally. And so we are in the hiring process for that. I will be asking two commissioners, I would recommend the chair and the vice chair to sit in on those interviews with myself and the HR director and possibly another Health and Human Services Director from a neighboring county. The first review of applications is set for May 8th. And so we'll start that process following that date. The restructuring that's been going on with the auditor, treasurer, county recorder, and license bureau, that is something, like I said earlier, that we'll be discussing tomorrow with some of the staff. And that will be coming back to the board at the May 16th agenda just for an update. And that's it. I wanted to plug in for Mel, we're doing an open house for the parks Thursday night at Goat Ridge in New London. It's a brewing company. And we're extending the survey for the trails. Did I say parks? I'm sorry. Trails, county trails. And so we're having that open house. And so we're extending the survey to May 7th. So if you have not filled out the survey or shared the survey on your personal social media, that would be greatly appreciated. We're trying to get as much input as we can for the future work of our county trails. I'm continuing to having one-on-one meetings with staff, starting the 2024 budget, working with the financial staff on some of those numbers. We're getting entered in, and then I'll start meeting with department heads in May and June. Just a reminder, property taxes are due May 15th. That's a Monday. And then just working on getting a consultant for a strategic planning session that we will be doing with the board.
Thank you. Commissioner Gardner, can we start on your end this time?
I will be brief, uncharacteristically. Attended as several of us did, the EDC Joint Powers Board meeting that took place last Thursday. Quite an extended meeting, but a lot was accomplished. I did attend yesterday the Supporting Hands Nurse Family Partnership Joint Powers Board meeting down in Olivia. And just to piggyback on what the chair commented on earlier when the sheriff and chief deputy were here, Commissioner Larry Linder of Polk County wanted me to pass along to the county board and also all of our county law enforcement his gratitude for the presence of our law enforcement team there in assisting Polk County during the recent tragedy there. And that's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Dwayne Anderson?
Okay, yeah, since our last county board meeting, we had our West Central Mental Health meeting. I guess all of us were there. And then April 26th, I had kind of a busy day. It started off with County Employee Appreciation Day. And, well, it's Government Employee Appreciation Day, but since we're county, we went around to different buildings and departments and handed out a little bag or whatever with some popcorn in it. And we went over by, it was, what do you call it, probation officers? I can't remember where we went. I went with Commissioner Berg around, and so it was fun. I think it was more for me than for the county employees in a lot of ways, because I learned more about what the individuals do. And that really is nice to kind of help me understand what our government is all involved in. So after that, I had a drug-free coalition meeting. That was kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a disappointing committee to be on at this time, because as a committee, we're trying to get youngsters and people to quit smoking tobacco and not to do drugs. And then at the same time, you're looking at the state legislature where they want to legalize marijuana, and it's pretty much a done deal now the way it looks. So kind of disappointing times, but we're trying to figure out what we can do now. Hopefully, down the road, maybe the state can fund a little more money towards this here to kind of help with issues that might develop as a result of legalizing marijuana. So that was that meeting. After that, then I was over at the unveiling of the statue at the Law Enforcement Center later that day. That was at 1 o'clock, and it was kind of fun to go over there, and we had our canine dog over there, the canine unit or whatever you want to call them, and I got to go pet the dog, so that was kind of fun. And then that evening I had a AIS task force meeting, and that was aquatic invasive species. Not a whole lot there. I guess it was just kind of updating us on hiring of inspectors at different public accesses on the lakes to kind of fill those positions for the year. And so they're making good progress on that. I think they're still looking for a few people to do that. So if anybody wants to do it, maybe you get a nice tan this summer on the
Don't
county's.
say that after Dr. Sidney Perkins.
Yeah, get a nice tan, which you're not supposed to do. But anyway, so that was that day. And April 27th, I had a UCAP meeting down Redwood Falls. And May 1st, which was yesterday, I had Economic Development Committee broadband meeting, and just kind of updating us on kind of projects going around the county. And it's kind of nice to see that we're getting some things started. And then we're waiting still to hear if we're going to get any kind of grants for some other projects that are going on or that we applied for. So hopefully we can get them going. I hope we get them all and get this county moving towards fiber optic countywide. So that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Dwayne. Dale?
Well, I guess the big thing is, after our meeting last month, was open mic. I was scared to death, to be real honest. But it went very well. I want to thank Tammy Jo for being there. She does a great job talking. She didn't have a note in front of her. I guess that's what I was most impressed about. She just talked, and I was sitting there with my piles of papers lined up, so I didn't screw anything up, and I still didn't do it perfect. But Appreciate the opportunity to do that. That was really kind of fun, actually, after it was all done. But on the 20th, the next day was Historical Society had their annual meeting from 5 to 8, and there was a very good turnout for that. I guess that's one thing that I was never active in or never, I drove by and always looked at the train, and that was about as far as I went. But, you know, there's a lot of stuff for people to go and look at in that building, and this history of our county is kind of amazing in that building. So I guess I want to give them a little plug to take time and this summer and stop in and tour what's all in there. It's really kind of interesting, all the different things they have, and they're trying to have different events throughout the summer and fall. So I think it's kind of a neat thing that we have that opportunity to go and see that historical part of our stuff. The other thing that it was at was a Highway 23 Coalition meeting for the Southern Gap. Very interesting to see who was all involved and all the time and effort that was put into that project. And I guess I'm really excited that we can jump on in New London or Wilmer here or whatever at some point and get all the way to St. Cloud without really stepping on the brakes. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity for economic development in our area. People keep talking about being able to travel product in between areas, and I think that's going to be a great thing. So them are my things.
Thanks, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Berg.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I will report on two major areas that I would just really like to share with the board and bring them up to speed on. Prairie Lakes Youth Program, we mentioned that in reference to a contractor just a bit ago. But we had a meeting. I invited Candido County Administrator Ms. Baker to that meeting as well. And it was a multi-purpose meeting, and one was like a meet and greet, and Ms. Baker got a tour of the facility and the program, and got to meet some of the staff. But also part of the agenda was to talk about the need for some capital improvements. And Prairie Lakes program is fairly stable at this point financially, which is very important, and some of these increases and changes we've had to adjust to make that happen is coming about. So now we have some time to talk about where we're going to go with this program because of the needed capital improvements. And for example, the Department of Corrections says we should have a gym, and we don't have a gym. And I'm not sure how long we can get by without that. And this facility, how long will this facility continue to meet our needs? So we've been starting to explore that, and as a board, as a Joint Powers Board, we're 5 counties, and just for the record that we own the building, Candido County does, but there's 4 other counties that run the program, and they pay rent to Candido County. So we're looking at what the needs are going to be going forward, and what changes are going to have to be to meet some of these legal requirements we have to meet with Department of Corrections, and what the future in correction looks like. We've seen some major changes this last couple of years because of COVID, and really they're going to more to rehab and this type of program there, that we treat people differently, and I think in a very more positive way, and when they come through the system. Anyway, we had a meeting, and one thing we talked about, I just want to share with the board, was that we were basically invited as county commissioners to come and visit after one of our meetings. So I would like to bring that up maybe later at a time that maybe after a next board meeting or some board meeting in June, if there's time, we get done early enough that we would go over there for a short visit, since it is so close. And I know several of you have been there already, but then we can look at it from different eyes than going this time too. This is our building, and not necessarily what the program is by itself, but the whole package deal. So I just want to let you be aware of that. The other thing was, the good news I have to announce is that Southern Prairie Community Care Program is officially disbanded. We did get 100% membership, and we had a vote last Friday, and they voted to officially close it now, so it's done. At this point, then, because of that, previously we got approximately we did get $704,387 as part of the money we had invested in there, or not we invested in there, but what was part of the settlement for the whole program. And there was a remaining dollars of approximately, where is it? I got the figure here, 800 and some thousand dollars. Anyway, the bottom line is that we got the $704,000, as well as we're just waiting to close the program. And now that it's officially closed, we will be getting in a minimum of $130,000 additional money, which is earmarked then for our joining Prime West. And so with that, our joining Prime West is almost a wash. Ms. Baker, am I correct on that at this point? That instead of going into Prime West and it was going to cost us, several million, and this is approximately $2,007,000 less. So this is a real good deal for us moving forward with Prime West. Also, we're holding back $12,000 just for the rest of the year, so that'll settle the counts out. And of the money that was remaining, it was divided up between the counties and based on population as well. And so it's approximately 16% of the dollars. So we did hold back $12,000 in case anything else happens. Lyon County is the fiscal host and until the end of this year. And if there's no additional bills come in for that program, then that $12,000, which most likely will still be $12,000, will be divided out based on that formula. So it's not a lot of dollars, but it's still something a little bit more that will be coming in. So it's finished, and I think at this point we can move ahead, and the checks will be mailed out. The remaining checks of it's going to be between $130,000 to $137,000 coming to Candioi County, so we could move ahead and pay our invoice that we just recently received from Prime West to join them at this time. So that's my extent of my important updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Berg. I'm surprised that you left this one for me, but we had an EDC Joint Powers meeting last Thursday, I think it was, which went from 11 o'clock until 3 o'clock or later, because I had to leave at 3 o'clock, but probably more to come on some of the results of that meeting or discussion. And then I'm going to just put out a reminder here to all of us that right now the legislature is by and large in conference. So you had a House bill, you had a Senate bill, they get together and they hammer out the differences. And so there's a lot of things affecting Candioi County. I'm going to tie this to last Monday's meeting, or a week ago Monday, the Glacier Lake Sanitary Sewer and Water District meeting. We have a $13 million and change project that is needs to be done. And if the bonding bill gets passed and allows for publicly financed PFAs.
PFA, yep. Public Facilities Authority.
Whatever, I think you got it. We would qualify for grants that would pay for a good share of the cost here. So if we don't get this money, we're going to have to raise the rates to the members by 6%. And so whatever you could do to get your legislators and others that you know in the legislature to support the bonding bill. It's also all of the bills that are in the transportation, and of course, Tammy Jo Lieberg's favorite, probation funding. It's all of ours. It's the number one priority of Association of Minnesota Counties. I've already heard back from 2 legislators that if it's an omnibus bill, they're not going to support it, which is very concerning to me because nobody likes the omnibus bills, but sometimes you have to compromise a little bit, and so hopefully we get that one over the finish line this year. I'm going to get up from my seat for just a minute. I'll be right back. So I was also at the groundbreaking on Friday, whatever that was, and as I was leaving, District Engineer John Huseby said, "Roger, can you use a shovel?" And I can't use this shovel. I'm not going to use this shovel, but it was a shovel that they had several shovels that people were signing as they came in. And you might have one of these, it seems like I've seen
From
a
the Y.
shovel in your office or more than one. But I got to thinking, why would I want this shovel? What should we do with it? And so our county, I'm going to appropriately lean on this just because it feels good.
There's instructions on how to do that if you want them.
So our county in the past has received awards and recognition for different things we've done, and individuals have received them. And I'm wondering if, like in the high school, if we would have a place where we could maybe create a display case or something where we could put these sort of mementos, because I'm pretty sure you don't want it laying around your office. At least if there's 4 or 5 of them down the road, you probably don't, no, you can't use this one. For those kind of countywide awards that we have, we could maybe display them or have a unit where, I'm thinking out loud here, have a unit for countywide ones, a unit for department-wide, and a unit for individuals, because, you know, some of the things we get as individuals, we don't necessarily want to put in our closet at home either. So that's my report up. For now, you get to keep the shovel. It's your responsibility. That's all I have.
Just for the
Mr.
record,
Chair.
Mr. Chair, you looked like a professional doing that.
Yeah,
Yes, Mr. Chair,
yes.
if I may. Yeah, we could probably hang it on the wall in here, I don't know, above the door or something.
But we'll get more awards, so there won't be room for all of them.
Okay.
That's
but-
why I'm proposing a display case.
I just want to say kudos to you and Dale, you're on the committee now too, and to Mel. That was a big deal. And I attended that meeting as well. And thank you for your leadership over all these years and the many different aspects of the people that made this happen. The stories were really good. So that was a big accomplishment.
And perhaps a shout out to former Commissioner Raleigh Nissen as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
Roger.
All right, oh, go ahead.
Just being it was talked about, Steve brought it up, could we put that recycling issue on the agenda or in a working session or something, so we can talk about that in the future?
I think so, but let me ask, when is our contract up, do you know? I mean, we shouldn't wait until the,
Contract, so we're about in
We're getting
the
close.
second or third year, or
Okay.
third year maybe, right, roughly?
Maybe just.
so it's gonna be difficult making
got another
any
couple
major
years.
changes before the contract is up, but we don't wanna wait until it's up
Right.
to have that conversation.
And look at our, Mr. Chair, and look at our budget too, yeah.
Yep. All right, unless there's anything else to come before the board, we are adjourned.